Chapter 811. Inside the deathly silent room. Augustino slowly woke up from his sleep. His pupils suddenly shrunk when a chilling aura came from his neck, and all the hairs on his body stood erect. What's going on? He once imagined that one day he would wake up with a butcher's knife on his neck. But that place was definitely not in the prison's lounge. He was very assured about the prison's defense system, but he was even more assured about his loyal ability user subordinate. Augustino's eyes followed the faint light shining in through the window, and saw the corpse on the ground. It was his loyal subordinate. Spectre patted Augustino's cheek, and said with a faint smile, "Sir Warden, I really don't want to stay in this prison anymore. I have many ways to escape, but I think it's the easiest to let you send me out. If you don't want to die, why don't you get dressed and send us out?" After Augustino saw Spectre's face, his heart was like falling into an ice cave, full of chills. In the entire labor camp 1319, if there was someone he feared, it would be this devil called Spectre in front of him. That's right. He was not a devil, but he was more like one. "You want me to send you out, Spectre? You don't have to kill my men, do you?" Augustino was aware of the crisis at this time. So he wanted to find out Spectre's real purpose by beating around the bush. Otherwise, even if he could safely send Spectre out, the final outcome would be him being brutally murdered. This was because there was nothing a bold guy like Ghost didn't dare to do. "I don't like trouble, and your men will only bring me trouble." Spectre sneered. "Most importantly, these two are my companions. I can easily go out, but they won't be so easy. Hence, I can only ask for your help." Augustino's complexion instantly turned ghastly pale, and fear filled every corner of his heart. Everyone thought that he regarded money as his life, but few people knew that he was as shrewd as a fox. He felt that he still had some hope to survive if Spectre didn't explain. But since Spectre actually wasted his breath to explain, there was only one conclusion. There was a deeper hidden reason behind Spectre's desire to leave. "I just want to live, Spectre." Jean-Sure strode to the front of Augustino. His iron pincer-like hand clutched the latter's throat and fiercely said, "Cooperate with us honestly if you want to live. Actually, as long as we leave, it doesn't matter whether we kill you or not. Of course, if you can give us some benefits, or give us some money to buy your life, then your chances of survival will be higher." "I will give it to you," Augustino said without hesitation. Spectre slightly furrowed his brows. His impression of Jean-Sure and Shueisha instantly worsened. He didn't expect Tanxio's men to be so greedy. Oblivious to Spectre's thoughts, Jean-Sure placed the dagger on Augustino's waist and coldly snorted. "Remember, the more money you have, the more likely you are to survive." "He regards money as his life, Jean-Sure," said Spectre indifferently. "If you don't want to complicate matters, you'd better not waste any more time. If you want money, there are many ways to get it outside." "You're not short on money, are you?" Jean-Sure grinned. "Nope," answered Spectre. "Since you're not short on money, then Shueisha and I will divide this guy's money," said Jean-Sure with a smile. "We're both very poor, so poor that we're about to go begging." Spectre no longer paid attention to Jean-Sure. He could see that Jean-Sure and Shueisha were determined to fish out some money from Augustino, so his figure flashed and disappeared from the room. 10 minutes later, Augustino transferred $100 million to Jean-Sure's Swiss bank account. Then, under Jean-Sure and Shueisha's coercion, he sat in his car downstairs, and was called by a prison guard to drive the car. The four of them quickly left the prison in the bulletproof car. At a fork in the road only 2 kilometers away from the labor camp 1319's gate, Tanxio quietly sat in his car, and watched the car driving out of the prison's direction. Then he said, "You can leave now, but the rest will depend on your ability." After saying that, he got off the car. He got off straight and watched the car drive away into the distance. Tanxio took out his mobile and dialed a cell number. "Oh, drive the car over here." "All right, 2 minutes." Moa's voice came out of the phone. 2 minutes later, the 4 passenger cars, led by 2 black SUVs, quickly arrived in front of Tanxio. As the cars stopped, Moa was the first to get off and respectfully asked, "When will the people inside come out, boss?" Tanxio squinted his eyes and said, "Half an hour at most. Once the time is exceeded, It means that something unforeseen has happened inside. That's right. Is the ship ready to leave? It's already waiting at the Portolua port. Moa nodded and said, It's a passenger ship we rented. The ship's departure time is 4 hours later, but after we bribed the ship's owner, the ship that originally has a lot of passengers will only provide service to us. You'll be in charge of the return route. Tan Xiao nodded with satisfaction. I don't want to run into any trouble on the way, Moa confidently said. You can rest assured, boss. All the procedures for the ship are very complete, and the owner behind it is very powerful, so there won't be any problems. However, once the ship leaves this country, I'm afraid we'll have to find another way to leave. Find an isolated island in the sea through the GPS, said Tan Xiao. I must train those prisoners before taking them to Clam Island. All right. While they were talking, he walked straight to the bulletproof car parked a dozen meters away. As the door opened, Tan Xiao glanced at Augustino and lightly said, Act according to the plan. Don't make any mistakes. The despair in Augustino's eyes turned more intense at this moment. At this moment, he could already tell that Spectre and the others were definitely not just escaping from prison. In particular, the 4 passenger cars parked tens of meters away must be part of a huge conspiracy. I've already given you the money. Spare my life. Tan Xiao stared blankly and frowned at Jean Shi. We've been very poor recently, boss. Jean Shi grinned and said, I'll give it to you after we get back after extorting $100 million from this guy. Tan Xiao couldn't help laughing and said, You guys do have some means to extort so much money from this guy who treats money like his life. Forget it, you can divide it among yourselves. Jean Shi's smile turned brighter, and he said with a flattering expression, You're really generous, boss. Cut the flattery. Tan Xiao cursed with a smile, and then turned to leave. Augustino realized that Tan Xiao was the one with the most power here, so he quickly called out, Please let me go. I can give you more money if you think it's not enough. Tan Xiao's pace halted. He turned around and sneered. Do you think money is more important? Or human beings? Human beings are more important. Augustino didn't know what Tan Xiao was referring to, but he still replied without hesitation. Human beings are more important. Tan Xiao chuckled and said, I think it's a good deal to exchange your life for 200 powerful prisoners in the prison. Money. We can earn it if we don't have it, but it'll be a big loss if we lose our talents. Do you think I'm right, Augustino? You want to raid the prison? Augustino exclaimed. Tan Xiao shook his head and said, We're too lazy to use such a laborious method like jailbreaking. Your prison's second-in-command received $400 million from me. I think it's very reasonable to sell 200 prisoners to me, but you can only be the scapegoat. Immediately after, Tan Xiao made a gesture to Jean Shi. Jean Shi stuffed Augustino's mouth and let him struggle and beg for mercy, too lazy to pay any attention to him. Inside the prison, more than a dozen prison guards opened the cell doors one after another, and the prisoners inside came out. They didn't speak but looked excited as they followed the prison guards along the corridor toward the outside. Soon after, 199 prisoners left their cells and walked outside faster and faster under the curious gazes of many prison guards. What's the situation, Steve? A police officer in the prison had just come out of the room of a female prisoner. He hadn't even put on his belt when he looked at the prison guards who had already brought out a large number of prisoners. The prison guard's complexion slightly changed, but he still quickly raised a form and said, The warden personally issued an order to take them outside to do something. The warden is now waiting outside the prison. The police officer frowned and asked with a puzzled expression, They're all felons. It'll be a big problem if you send them out with just these people. I'll send 2 squads to help you escort them. Puff. A bearded foreign big man pulled out a steel nail from his waist and tore the officer's throat. He covered the officer's mouth with his hand, and then pierced the officer's heart with the steel nail. Afterward, he kicked open the door of the room the officer came out from and directly threw the officer who was covering his throat inside. TSK. A female prisoner who was just raped? You've met a pervert, haven't you? This injury is very serious. The bearded man looked at the female prisoner who was curled up in the corner, and let out a strange smile. The female prisoner was an Asian with a very thin and short stature, but she looked very pretty. Her complexion immediately changed when she saw the miserable appearance of the officer who had just raped her. She didn't bother to pick up her clothes to cover her sensitive parts, and jumped down from the bed in the corner. She picked up a chair and fiercely smashed the dying officer's head. In just a few seconds, the officer's head was smashed. The bearded man didn't hurry to leave with the other prisoners. Instead, he crossed his arms and leaned on the door, letting out a strange smile and said, "None of the prisoners locked up here are good people. This woman who looks like a chick is actually so ruthless. Not bad, not bad. Do you want to leave with us?" The female prisoner looked up. Although her face was splashed with blood and brains, she didn't wipe it and asked, "Can you leave this place? Escape?" Chapter 8:12. The bearded man had witnessed Tan Xiu's martial prowess. Even with his unruly character, he eventually succumbed to Tan Xiu's terrifying force. Therefore, he was glad that he could go out with Tan Xiu, and no longer had to stay in this dark prison where there was no freedom to talk. Looking at the female prisoner who had just been humiliated, he grinned and said, "You're lucky to have met us. But you must remember that we didn't meet tonight. And I'm not the one who told you that you can leave." After saying that, he no longer paid attention to the female prisoner, and quickly disappeared into the fast-moving stream of people outside. Chen Yan was the name of the female prisoner. She used to be a ruthless and merciless fiend. She had been living abroad with her parents since she was a child. As a result, she faced a tragic fate due to the death of her parents when she was still a minor. She was adopted by a gang of underworld forces, trained, and eventually became a ruthless character who killed people without batting an eye. Unfortunately, her luck was very bad. The underworld forces she belonged to were purged by the government, and she was also imprisoned as an international fugitive. After being sent to labor camp 1319, she was even more desperate to find that this place was not a women's prison, but a hell where both male and female prisoners were detained together. She had strength, but she wasn't very strong. As a result, she was coveted by too many male prisoners for more than 4 years due to her good looks. If it weren't for her cell's boss, an old man who was over 70 years old, protecting her, she would have been tortured to death. But even so, the old man had no way to deal with the threats from the prison's police officers, and she was repeatedly humiliated by many police officers. Chen Yan looked at the flow of people in the corridor outside. She quickly put on her clothes and wiped the blood on her face with her hand. The moment she stepped out of the door, she was secretly shocked. She had been in prison for more than 4 years, and found that the prisoners who were rushing outside were all very powerful characters in the prison. What the hell happened? She was a bit perturbed inside, but she still firmly strode forward and followed the flow of people outside. What shocked her was that they encountered more than a dozen sentries along the way. Yet the flow of people was not stopped. Even the prison guard leading them smoothly escorted them to the outermost gate. "Open the gate." Under the leadership of a police officer, more than a dozen prison guards looked at the dozens of prison guards guarding the gate and shouted, handing over forged passes to them. "Buddy, where are you going with so many criminals?" The expression of the prison guard at the door changed slightly as he hurriedly asked, "The warden has ordered us to fight in the underground boxing competition outside." "Why? You don't want to follow Warden Augustino's orders? Or are you jealous that our warden can make money?" "No, no, no. Open the door and let him go." As the electric iron gate slowly opened, more than 10 prison guards quickly left with the prisoners. When they stepped out of the prison gates, they finally revealed expressions of ecstasy, and they all sprinted towards the straight road in front of them. Chen Yan followed the flow of people. Never in her wildest dreams did she expect that she would be able to leave the prison alive in this life. Her face turned red, and her heart was filled with excitement. She moved faster and faster. However, to Chen Yan's surprise, so many prisoners escaped from the prison, but all of them ran along the main road in front of them. No one spread out in all directions. "Hey, where are we going?" Chen Yan deliberately slowed down and asked while walking side by side with a felon. The female convict looked at Chen Yan in surprise and immediately grinned. "You don't know where to go? Didn't the boss tell you?" "The boss? Chunyan was dumbfounded. How would she know anything about the boss? She could follow the flow of people because of the bearded man's reminder. After a moment of silence, she hurriedly said, "The boss only told me to go out, but he didn't tell me where to go. But you seem to know where to go." The female convict quickened her pace and quickly replied while running, "Don't ask if the boss didn't tell you. Remember to run with everyone. There will be people waiting for us outside. Someone will pick us up?" Chunyan's expression slightly moved. Seeing that the female convict didn't want to say more, she could only suppress the confusion in her heart. Being able to escape from the prison alive was the most important thing for her, and she couldn't care about anything else. Less than 2 kilometers away from the prison gate, she clearly saw 2 SUVs and 4 buses in front of her with the help of the dim starlight in the sky. With his hands clasped behind his back, Tanxio watched more than a dozen jailers and more than 200 convicts quickly rushing over. As the jailers quickly approached, he nodded with satisfaction and said, "Your mission has been completed, everyone. The deputy warden should have told you what to do next. Here, I'd like to thank you for your cooperation. There's $10 million in those suitcases over there. Consider it a token of my appreciation." The leading officer looked ecstatic and respectfully saluted Tanxio. Then, he quickly took the suitcases with more than a dozen jailers and quickly disappeared into the distant night. "Boss." 200 convicts quickly gathered in front of Tanxio. All of them had fiery eyes filled with deep worship. They still didn't know Tanxio's origin, but they were clear about 2 things. First, this future big boss was very strong, and he was definitely a man with eyes and ears everywhere. Otherwise, who would dare to buy 200 convicts from the world's strictest and most terrifying labor camp 1319? Who had the ability to buy 200 convicts at once? Although they used to be extremely terrifying existences, they also had very high intelligence, so they knew very well how big of a sensation they would cause in the future after being sold today. Tanxio nodded with satisfaction and shouted, "First of all, I want to congratulate you for being able to leave this place alive. Also, I want to congratulate you for having a more wonderful life in the future. But remember my words, I'm the only reason you can live in the future. Alright, everyone, maintain order and board the buses one by one. We'll leave by water later since the liner is ready." Mo paced 2 steps forward and said in a deep voice, "Line up into 4 teams and board the 4 buses." A few minutes later, all the purchased convicts boarded the buses. Just as Tanxio boarded one of the SUVs, Mo strode to the window and whispered, "There's an accident, boss." "What accident?" Tanxio slightly furrowed his brows. "I just counted the number of people. Aside from Spectre, there should be 199 convicts who came out this time," said Mo. "Spectre, Jin Shi, Shueisha, and the others went on a mission together, so Spectre isn't here. However, I just counted the number of people and found that there are 200 of them. There's no sign of Spectre." "There's one more?" A strange expression appeared on Tanxio's face. "That's right, there's one more," said Mo. A smile appeared on the corner of Tanxio's mouth as he said, "Oh, take a few men and check the list. Find the extra person, and bring him to me." "Understood." As the cars started, they headed to the distance. Mo and the members of the escort team boarded one of the cars and began to examine the 4 cars according to the list. Inside the 3rd car, Chunyan was a bit perturbed as she sat in the last row. Next to her were 2 female convicts. She even knew these 2 female convicts. They were very famous and powerful characters in the entire labor camp 1319. She had witnessed how ruthless one of them was. She once tore a black convict apart with her bare hands, so it was rumored that this female convict's sentence was 218 years. However, this was not the main reason why she was perturbed. What worried her was that the young man she just saw was definitely a very powerful figure. She didn't know whether it was a blessing or a curse for her to be inadvertently involved in such a big incident. Shit. Chunyan's expression suddenly changed. She saw 2 burly men holding a name list walking from the front to the back. Moreover, they were counting the number of people according to their ranks. What should I do? Chunyan's mind was in a mess. She wanted to jump out of the window and escape, but the felons around her would never allow her to escape. It was very likely that they would capture or kill her on the spot. He Xiong took the list and counted the people in the last row. He then looked at the 5 female convicts and asked in a deep voice, "Tell me your name and prison number." Ivy Cody number 0001184. Kadori number 0000634. Chunyan took a deep breath and said, "Chunyan number 0000460. Wait a minute." He Xiong flipped through the list and carefully searched several times. Yet he couldn't find Chunyan's name. His sharp eyes stared at her and said in a deep voice, "Where the hell did you come from? Your name isn't on the list of prisoners we bought." Chunyan steeled her heart and said, "I accidentally saw a lot of convicts coming out of the corridor, so I followed everyone out. I'm also very confused as to how I appeared here in a daze." "What?" He Xiong was stunned. Many convicts around also looked at Chunyan with a strange expression. After He Xiong reacted, he immediately said, "Come with me." "Where to?" asked Chunyan quickly. "To see the boss," replied He Xiong with an expressionless face. Following the phone call, the 2 SUVs in front stopped. When He Xiong brought Chunyan to Tanxio's SUV's window, he respectfully said, "Boss, I brought her." Tanxio glanced at Chunyan and lightly said, "Get in the car." Chunyan walked to the other door with a worried expression. She opened the door and sat next to Tanxio. She didn't rush to speak, but her heart was tense, guarding against Tanxio's sudden attack. The convoy moved forward again. Tanxio took out a cigarette from his pocket, lit it up and took 2 deep puffs. As he exhaled the smoke, he slowly said, "Shouldn't you give me an explanation?" Chunyan's lips squirmed a few times. She shook her head and said, "I don't know how to explain myself. I'm also a bit confused about being brought here." Chapter 8:13. Everyone had their own fortuitous encounters. If one grasped this opportunity, they might be able to reach the heavens in a single bound. Tanxio had never expected that his act of purchasing prisoners would give Chunyan such a great opportunity. Escape from prison? Immortal Ascension asked. After Tanxio figured out the whole story, he could only sigh inwardly. The first half of Chunyan's life was rough, but the second half of her life was blessed. Although he hadn't read Chunyan's file, the fact that she was imprisoned in labor camp 1319 indicated that she was once a sinful person. It also indicated that she had something outstanding about her. Since it's a coincidence, then stay. Tanxio didn't say anything after he cast a forbidden technique in Chunyan's body. At this moment, Chunyan felt like she was dreaming. She escaped from prison by a freak combination of factors and became Tanxio's subordinate in a trance. Suddenly, she was looking forward to her future life. Port of Puerto Lucia. A passenger ship was quietly docked at the port. Although the high spotlights illuminated the surroundings as if it was daytime, there were no signs of people in the entire port. However, on the bow deck of the liner, Yishir-san and Black Crow stood side by side, looking at the road in the distance. "He's here." With the illumination of the car lights in the distance, the expressions of the 2 people with excellent eyesight changed. They jumped off the bow and ran to the shore. When the car stopped in front of the 2 of them, they saw Tanxio walk out of the off-road vehicle and went forward to greet him. "Boss, has everything been arranged?" Tanxio nodded. Yishir-san said, "It's all arranged. All the crew and attendants are in place. The liner can set sail at any time." Tanxio asked, "Don't worry. Jean Shur and the others hadn't returned yet, so they would set sail after they came back. Organize the prisoners that were brought out from the prison, and have them wait on the boat." Yes. It didn't take long before the 200 prisoners alighted from the bus. Many of them looked excited when they saw the brightly lit liner, and ran towards it. For them, escaping from prison was equivalent to going to heaven. And this kind of large luxury liner was even more popular. Tanxio did not stop the prisoners from cheering, nor did he care about their disorderly behavior, because he knew very well that this might be the last time they would run together in such a chaotic manner. Once they found a deserted island, and underwent his cruel training, they would not even be willing to run around in such a chaotic manner. Half an hour later, everyone was settled on the ship. Every prisoner from the prison was given their own cabin. Everyone was given a lot of wine, food and fruit. Even in the gambling hall of the liner, which was originally provided for guests to gamble, there were many people gathered together to gamble. Even though they were in prison, almost everyone had their own private stash. Now that they were released, they directly used promissory notes as chips. The entire interior of the liner had been turned into a foul atmosphere by these lawless fellows. As a result, the crew members and attendants on the liner had to carefully avoid these people. On the liner's bow deck, Tan Xiu was quietly waiting for Spectre, Jin Shi, and Xue Sha. As time went by, at 4:30 in the morning, 3 figures flashed lightning fast from a distance and stood in front of Tan Xiu in just a few breaths. "It's all done, boss." Jin Shi cupped his fists and reported. "Is Augustino dead?" asked Tan Xiu. "He was shot to death by the police of this country," said Jin Shi. "More than a dozen prison guards who escorted the prisoners out also died in the fierce battle after they joined us. Don't worry. Even if some of the prison guards didn't die after being shot, I'm afraid they won't be able to be saved after being shot by us." Tan Xiu nodded and gestured to Mo behind him. Then he said, "Let's go. Let's try to leave this country's sea area as soon as possible. We can find a deserted island to temporarily station. When we enter the international waters, jade can't be made into tools if it isn't cut and polished. Those prisoners who were brought out from the prison need to be hammered." "How do you want to train them?" asked Spectre. Tan Xiu glanced at him and lightly said, "The rest must undergo cruel training except for you. Only 100 of the 200 prisoners will be left after the training is over." Spectre was shaken inwardly and fell into silence. Inside the liner, Gillen Toma quietly sat on the bed, watching the coast outside through the window. He was a prisoner, a felon who had been sentenced to 180 years in prison. He originally thought that he would die of old age in prison, but he didn't expect that he still had the possibility to come out alive. He longed for freedom more than anyone else. Although Tang Xiu said that there was a seal inside his body, he didn't believe it at all after he was rescued from the prison. He firmly believed that, "My fate is up to me, not the heavens." He was extremely unwilling to be restrained, so he had already come up with a plan. After leaving the prison, he would immediately find a way to escape. Even if Tan Xiu, the one who rescued them, was omnipotent, the world was a big place. As long as he concealed his identity, he could live a low-key and carefree life. "I gotta escape." Gillen Toma took a deep breath and sat up on the bed. He opened the door and quietly walked towards the stern of the ship. After investigating, he finally avoided many people and came to the stern. He quickly left the cabin and appeared on the stern deck. You want me, Gillen Toma, to pledge allegiance to you? Dream on. The person who can become my boss in this world hasn't even been born yet." Gillen let out a strange laugh and instantly jumped out of the ship. During the fall, his palm easily grabbed the iron chain hanging on the hull and quietly slid into the water. In the night, Gillen Toma moved stealthily in the pitch-black seawater. He swam 100 meters in one breath, and only then did he poke his head out of the light. However, in order to escape, he didn't dare to lower his guard. He swam into the distance while trying not to make a sound. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 hazy figures appeared at the stern of the ship where Gillen and Toma had jumped off. Shui Gui and Yi Shirsen looked at each other with a smile on their faces. "Boss is right. There will be people who think that boss's seal is just to scare people. They won't be willing to be controlled by boss, and will jump into the sea to escape when the liner is about to set sail. Water Ghost, the water is your territory, so you should bring him back," Yi Shirsen said with a smile. Shui Gui smiled proudly and rushed out like a cannonball. He stepped on the water and chased in the direction where Gillen escaped. When he was only 100 meters away from Gillen, he directly sank to the bottom of the water and swam to catch up. After entering the liner, Tan Xiu directly went to the gambling hall. Although many prisoners saluted him, they were almost perfunctory. Many of those who escaped from prison were only afraid of Tan Xiu because of his formidable strength, but they didn't have much respect for him. Interesting. Tan Xiu knew that it wasn't easy to subdue these unruly characters, so he didn't care about it. He quietly walked to the bar and asked the pale waiter for a glass of red wine. He gently took a sip, and then shook the glass while looking at the crowd, thinking about how to give them a show of strength. Not long after, Yi Shisan hurriedly came to Tan Xiu's side and whispered, "One of the prisoners escaped, boss. Shui Gui went to chase him and should bring him back later." This is getting more interesting. A strange smile appeared on Tan Xiu's handsome face. He gulped down the red wine in his glass and then slammed the glass on the floor and shouted, "Notify everyone to gather here immediately. I'll give you only 10 minutes. If anyone doesn't come within 10 minutes, I don't think he needs to leave with us." Understood. Mo and the other 4 quickly disappeared from the gambling hall. Time passed. As time went by, more and more felons who had been rescued from the prison arrived one after another. Excluding Ghost, 195 felons had arrived when the 10-minute time limit was about to be reached. 20 seconds left. Tan Xiu stood on the bar and a Mitsubishi Army knife silently appeared in his hand. "Get the fuck away." A rough voice came from outside the door of the gambling hall. Chun Yan, who was late, staggered into the door. When she steadied herself, she glared angrily at the burly man, who was bare-chested and covered with scars and tattoos, who came in behind her. "Close the door." Tan Xiu shouted in a deep voice when the 10-minute time limit was up. As the gambling hall's door was closed, Tan Xiu scanned the place with his spiritual sense and immediately shouted, "Oh, go catch Yale Sass and GD." Understood. Mo silently mourned for Yale Sass and GD inwardly as he quickly walked outside. A few minutes later, Mo grabbed the 2 men by their necks and dragged them into the gambling hall. Finally, he threw them in front of the bar where Tan Xiu was. "Damn bastard. If it wasn't for a sneak attack, this big daddy would have kicked your balls." Yale Sass had a fiery temper and was a notorious troublemaker in Labor Camp 1319, who liked to stir up trouble. Few people dared to contradict him due to his formidable strength. Mo's expression turned cold, and he dashed towards Yale Sass like an arrow, kicking him in the face at lightning speed. As blood spurted out, a dagger appeared in Mo's hand out of thin air, and he stabbed it into Yale Sass's shoulders at lightning speed, leaving 2 bloody holes. "Bastard." "Bam." Just as Yale Sass was about to curse again, Mo punched him in the mouth. Even though Yale Sass had tough teeth, they were still broken by the punch. "Kneel." Tan Xiu sat cross-legged on the bar, indifferently watching the beaten Yale Sass and GD. Tang Xiu made up his mind to teach them a lesson in front of these felons who had committed heinous crimes, so that they would remember his terror. Chapter 8:14. Yale Sass wiped the blood from his mouth with his arm, and stared at Tan Xiu with provocative eyes before he slowly crawled up from the ground. The unruly expression on his face caused a large number of prisoners in the surroundings to applaud loudly. It was obvious that they were ready to watch a good show. GD, on the other hand, looked gloomy and sneered. "Even if you saved us and made us swear loyalty to you, you can't humiliate us, can you?" "Humiliate you?" Tan Xiu sneered. "Do you think you have the qualifications to be humiliated by me? Don't forget that your lives are in my hands. If I want to kill you, I can make your souls scatter and never reincarnate with just a thought." "I know you're very strong," said GD in a deep voice. "You can even make Spectre bow his head. I really admire you for that. In my eyes, this world is one where the strong prey on the weak. You're stronger than us and even rescued us from prison, so we're willing to follow you. But don't be too arrogant. We only promised to follow you and do things for you, but you can't let us fall into another cage." "Humph," Tan Xiu snorted coldly. The Mitsubishi Army knife in his hand instantly shot out and pierced GD's heart in an instant. The Mitsubishi Army knife even came out from GD's back and then circled around his neck, neatly cutting it off and sending his head rolling to the ground. What? Aside from Spectre, Amos and the Amos brothers, the other nearly 200 prisoners had their expressions drastically changed. The smiles on their faces froze and their bodies instantly tensed up with disbelief in their eyes. Even though they were all extremely vicious people, a powerhouse like Tang Xiu, who would immediately kill them without a word of disagreement, was still shocking to them. Tan Xiu looked at Yale Sass again and indifferently said, between death and absolute obedience. Which one will you choose? The anger that filled Yale Sa's heart instantly faded away. He was shocked by Tanxio's terror, but he was even more horrified by Tanxio's cruelty. However, to be intimidated in front of so many people like this made him lose face. I can obey your orders, but you must give us respect. I don't think you'll let us all die here, since you've spent so much effort to save us, right? Tanxio smiled and shook his head. As he formed a seal with both hands, monstrous flames instantly appeared around Yale Sass. It was as if Yale Sass was surrounded by invisible gasoline. The raging flames enveloped him and burned him unscrupulously. A blood-curdling scream came from Yale Sass' mouth. As he struggled to jump and roll on the ground, the flames burned even more vigorously. Tanxio took out a cigarette and lit it up. He took 2 puffs and then sneered. You want to talk about respect in front of me? It was simply laughable. You should have been tortured to death in labor camp 1319. You should have died of old age there. This is the second life I gave you, so you must obey my orders. Furthermore, in my eyes, all of you are just a bunch of ants. Do you think that ants are worthy of respect in the hearts of humans? The rolling sound waves instantly spread to the ears of everyone present. In an instant, the onlookers were shocked by Tanxio's cruelty and terror, but they were also angry at Tanxio's humiliating words. They dared not speak out despite their anger, and could only watch helplessly as Yale Sass was burned to ashes by the raging flames. BM. The door of the casino's lobby was pushed open, and everyone looked toward the entrance in an instant. Water Ghost, who was carrying the dripping Gillen Toma, came to Tanxio and respectfully said, I caught this guy who wanted to escape, boss. After saying that, he directly threw Gillen to the ground. Tanxio nodded with a faint smile. He looked at Gillen, who jumped up from the ground and asked, I spent some effort to rescue you from prison, and you promised to be loyal to me. How could you go back on your words and want to betray me and escape? Gillen was shocked when he saw Gidi's body on the ground. However, he still gritted his teeth and said, That's right. You did rescue us. But everyone has their own ambitions. What I need the most is freedom, not to be bound by someone. I'll naturally repay your kindness in the future, but I won't hand my life over to you. A smile appeared on Tanxio's face, and it became more and more brilliant. He looked at the serious expression on Gillen's face and applauded. That's right. You do need freedom. Gillen looked happy and hurriedly asked, Are you willing to let me go? Of course. Tanxio nodded and said, Not only will I let you go, but I'll also take you to a heavenly place. Gillen looked ecstatic and turned around to stride toward the casino's entrance under the watchful eyes of everyone. Tanxio flicked the cigarette butt away and said in a clear voice, I told you that every prisoner I bought from prison will forever be under my control for the rest of their lives. I also told you that I've cast a seal inside your bodies. I can scatter your souls with just a thought, and you'll never be able to reincarnate. Huff! A gust of wind appeared out of thin air, and lifted Tanxio's body to float a meter high in the air. He then placed his hands behind his back and coldly shouted, Die! Gillen, who was quickly walking outside, suddenly turned stiff. A mouthful of blood spurted out of his mouth, and his body softly fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Spectre, who was not far away, had a change in expression. He flashed to Gillen's side, and put his finger on Gillen's nostrils. Half a minute later he struggled to get up from the ground and cupped his fists like Moau and the others did, saying, Spectre will always be loyal to you, boss. He's dead? Nearly 200 prisoners in the hall of the casino looked at Gillen Toma's corpse in horror. Tanxio controlling the Mitsubishi Army knife to kill Gidi and burning Yale Sass to death were still within the scope of what they could bear. But after Tanxio's words, Gillen and Toma died without any warning, causing their minds to be thrown into chaos. Could it be, is what he said true? Can he really control our life and death? Even if he can kill us with just a thought? Nearly 200 prisoners slowly shifted their eyes to Tanxio, who was hovering in the air. They cupped their fists with a fearful look and spoke in a surprisingly uniform voice. We'll always be loyal to you, boss. Tanxio nodded with satisfaction and casually said, No matter how good your words are, it's useless. What I need to see is your actual actions. Of course, I don't mind being betrayed. No matter where you flee to, I'll kill you immediately with just a thought. How did you do it, boss? Asked Spectre. I've cast a restriction spell on your bodies before, directly engraving it in your hearts, said Tan Xiao. You're too weak, so I can clearly feel that you're under my control, but you can't feel it. Just wait. When your strength advances by leaps and bounds and reaches a certain level, you'll be able to feel how terrifying it is. All the prisoners were frightened. Their faces turned pale, and fear appeared in their eyes. It was at this moment that they truly realized the tragic end of going against Tan Xiao's will. Tan Xiao looked at everyone's faces and felt more and more satisfied. He even wanted to thank these three reckless guys. If it weren't for them, how could he have had the chance to make an example out of them? How could he really make these once unruly people behave? However, blindly intimidating them wouldn't achieve the best effect at this time. Only by combining kindness and might could he truly subdue their hearts. Therefore Tan Xiao looked around and spoke again. You don't need to worry. I'm not the kind of person who will kill the innocent, nor will I kill you easily. As long as you're loyal to me, not only will I not harm you, but I'll also reward you instead. When we arrive at the next temporary station, I'll teach you an immortal cultivation technique. As long as you practice diligently, your strength will advance by leaps and bounds in the future. You'll be thousands of times stronger than you are now. Although Chun Yan's parents were Chinese, they had lived abroad since childhood, and had never heard of the existence of immortal cultivators. Therefore she plucked up her courage and asked aloud, "What is an immortal cultivation technique, boss? How should we practice it? Also, you said, if we practice diligently, can we really be thousands of times stronger than we are now?" As for what an immortal cultivation technique is and how to practice it, don't be impatient. You'll naturally know when we arrive at the next temporary station, said Tan Xiao. As for whether you can be thousands of times stronger than you are now, that will depend on your own efforts. I'll definitely work hard, boss, said Chunyan aloud. Tan Xiao nodded. He had a bit of a favorable impression toward this lucky woman. After deterrence, he casually said a few more words and directly left. As for the two corpses on the ground and the pile of ashes, Jin Shi and the others disposed of them. Previously, because Tan Xiao was about to take action, the waiters who were asked to leave were brought back here. However, Tan Xiao's last few words ordered them not to make things difficult for the waiters here, so their attitude toward the waiters was much better. Some desperados even planned to take the beautiful waiters back to their rooms to vent their anger. But now, they didn't dare to have such thoughts anymore. Women. They were everywhere in the world, but they only had one life. If they were killed by Tan Xiao because of insulting the waiters on the liner, it would be a loss that would outweigh the gain. Dawn came. In just a few hours, all countries in the world learned of a sensational event. The warden of the labor camp 1319 abused his power for personal gain and organized the prisoners to go out to fight in the black market boxing tournament, which eventually led to the successful escape of 201 prisoners, and their whereabouts were now unknown. Chapter 8:15. The barren island in the vast sea covered an area of less than 10 kilometers. The entire island was covered with forests and the highest peak was nearly 100 meters high. Due to the high temperature here, the island was lush all year round. Let's set foot on the island. After the liner docked on the shore, Tan Xiao trod on the air and took the lead to set foot on the island under the shocked and fanatical eyes of the prisoners. Mo and the rest followed him and stood in a row on the beach. As for the prisoners bought from the prison, they were like scattered sand that swarmed to the shore. With his hands clasped behind his back, Tan Xiao stood in the air and said in a deep voice, "Oh, the duty of the 11 of you is to organize them. I'll give you 2 days. I want to see them in an orderly formation and strict discipline. Of course, you don't need to pay attention to anyone who dares to disobey your orders. Just tell me when I come back, and I'll make them die here." Mo knew that Tan Xiao wanted to eliminate a batch of people here, so he deliberately asked aloud, "Boss, do you want elite soldiers? Or do you want to casually train them?" Tan Xiao instantly understood his meaning and shouted in a deep voice, "The subordinates of this Tan Xiao are naturally elite soldiers. You all know the law of the jungle. The weak are prey to the strong, and the weak survive. I can tell you without concealing anything. Apart from the 3 who have already died, there are still 197 of you left. However, the number of people I can take away from this island will not exceed 150. In other words, if there are too many people who can't adapt to my training, the number of people who can leave this deserted island alive will not exceed 100. A burly black man hurriedly asked, "We want to know the elimination criteria, boss." "That's a good question," Tan Xiu said with satisfaction. "The elimination criteria are actually very simple. Those who don't obey orders will be eliminated. Those who don't train hard will be eliminated. Those who kill each other will be eliminated, and those who try to escape will be eliminated." The burly black man quickly asked, "Isn't the final elimination criteria based on individual strength, boss? Some of you are strong and some are weak." Tan Xiu sneered. "It's too shallow to judge based on martial strength. If I remember correctly, some of you are just ordinary people who are more powerful in a certain aspect. But in a certain aspect it wasn't force. If we eliminate them just like that, it's definitely not respecting their talents." At this moment, almost everyone understood what Tan Xiu meant. They firmly remembered the 4 elimination criteria that Tan Xiu mentioned in their hearts and agreed loudly. Tan Xiu looked at Spectre and lightly said, "You don't need to participate in the training. Come with me to the island. I need to use an array to hide our tracks." Array formation? Ghost's heart skipped a beat. He had heard of the legendary formation and witnessed its power. Back in prison, Tan Xiu had used an array to trap him. 2 days later, Tan Xiu had shrouded the deserted island with an array formation. If seen from the outside, it would still be the same deserted island, but the situation inside could not be seen clearly. Such an illusory array made Spectre feel nothing but shock. It was because he had witnessed Tan Xiu's attainments in arrays that his admiration for Tan Xiu deepened. He couldn't wait to get his hands on a cultivation technique and possess these mysterious and unfathomable abilities. Very good. When Tan Xiu returned to the crowd with Spectre, he looked at the neat and tidy formation of 5 people with a satisfied look on his face. Under the threat of death, the unruly prisoners all tried their best to cooperate and train seriously. Back on the liner, Tan Xiu had instructed them to teach everyone the acupoints and meridian routes of the human body, and Mo and the others had done so, imparting cultivation techniques. It was supposed to be a simple task, but due to the large number of people, it took Tan Xiu several days to impart the cultivation technique to everyone. On the coast, Tan Xiu stood in the air and said in a deep voice, "I have taught you everything that should be taught. I don't care what special abilities you once had. As long as you can reach the early stage of qi cultivation first, you can get an elixir from me. There are only 10 places. I hope you will work hard." 10 places? Suddenly, everyone's spirits were lifted, and their eyes showed a determined look. They wanted to become stronger and be able to fly in the sky like Tan Xiu. Hence, they secretly made up their minds to cultivate diligently and strive to be ranked in the top 10. In the following days, the training was extremely arduous. Although Tan Xiu gave everyone a few hours of qi sensing time every day, most of the time was spent on physical training. 10 days later, everyone was tortured by the huge amount of physical training. There were even a few who couldn't hold on and wanted to escape, but were eventually killed by Tan Xiu. 20 days later, the survivors had gradually adapted to the cruel training. Although the training would increase every 2 days, they were able to grit their teeth and persevere. A month later, apart from Spectre, only 182 people were still alive. But in just a month of cruel training, almost everyone was reborn, and their mental appearance was completely different from before. Unfortunately, for a whole month, only 5 people could sense the qi sensing in their bodies, and could skillfully control the qi sensing according to the circulation route of the cultivation method. They could be considered to have stepped into the early stage of qi cultivation. These 5 people were Spectre, Amos Amosai, and Zhang Xiaohua. As for the last person, Tan Xiu was greatly surprised. She was Chen Yan. "Are you sure you can control the qi sensing in the meridians according to the cultivation method I taught you?" Tan Xiao looked at Qin Yan's thin face and asked in a deep voice. I'm sure, said Qin Yan. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment and asked again. Have you practiced a similar cultivation method before? Does Qigong count? Asked Qin Yan. In an instant, Tan Xiao understood why Qin Yan could break through to the early stage of Qi cultivation so quickly. Practicing Qigong was also a way of cultivation, but the level of the Qi practicing Qi was very low. But no matter how low the level was, Qin Yan had the foundation. When she transformed the Qi practicing Qi into true essence and familiarized herself with the control, she finally became a cultivator at the early stage of Qi cultivation. Whoosh! A figure flashed lightning fast from the distant coast and stood in front of Tan Xiao in just a few breaths. With a respectful face, Shui Gui reported, after this month's investigation, a total of 66 reconnaissance aircrafts and 124 military helicopters have passed over our airspace, with a total of 52 cruises. In addition, a total of 23 warships have passed the vicinity, with a total of 14 round-trip trips. Only 2 warships have passed by in the last week, and there are no more reconnaissance aircrafts and military helicopters. Tan Xiao nodded with satisfaction and said, Continue with the investigation. We'll leave this place in a week. Tell Ao to come here. I need to ask him something else. Understood. Shui Gui replied and disappeared in front of Tan Xiao. A few minutes later, Ao, dressed in a black uniform, quickly appeared in front of Tan Xiao. Without waiting for Tan Xiao to ask, he respectfully said, Boss, we've got a clear picture of the search intensity of various countries through our contacts with the outside world. We also learned about the situation of the prison in Israel. Tell me about it, said Tan Xiao. After a month of searching, the temporary search teams set up by various countries have been withdrawn one after another, said Mo Ao. Only Israel and a few surrounding countries are still searching. We may run into a bit of trouble if we leave now. Further, our plan wasn't very successful. The prison's deputy warden wasn't promoted to a warden, but transferred out of labor camp 1319 instead. He's still being interrogated by interrogation experts from various countries. As for Gus Gillis, he also sent us a message. His men have suffered a lot of losses due to the government's efforts to clean up the underground forces. Our original plan to help him become the boss of Tel Aviv's underground forces will have to be put on hold for the time being. He wants to ask us for our contact information. Tell him to keep a low profile for half a year. Tan Xiao shook his head indifferently and said, Our people will naturally go to help him after that. As for the contact information, there's no need to give it to him. Understood. Mo Ao agreed. Inform them to stay here for another week, and then we'll immediately evacuate, said Tan Xiao again. Boss, there's a message from the liner, said Mo Ao hesitantly. They said that the food stored on board has almost been consumed, and they need to replenish it. We haven't eaten the food stored on the liner ever since we landed on this island, said Tan Xiao with a frown. How can it be consumed so fast? It's reasonable to say that there are only about 20 crew members and attendants on board, and the food stored on board is enough for them to eat for several months. I've asked about it. The reason is that a lot of the food has rotted and been discarded due to the hot weather, said Mo Ao with a forced smile. The weather? Tan Xiao's expression moved, and he immediately forced a wry smile inwardly. He didn't expect that he had overlooked this reason. After giving it a thought, he directly said, Go tell the captain that we'll hunt on this island, and let them find a way to fish some fish. We'll definitely have enough food for everyone for half a month after 7 days. Understood. Mo Ao nodded. The last 7 days, everyone's training was suspended. Under the leadership of Mo Ao and the others, the 5 teams were divided into 5 groups and began to hunt on the island. Although the island was not large, there were a lot of wild beasts on it. Most of the food eaten by everyone these days was from the prey they hunted, but the number of wild beasts on the island was still a lot. Finally, on the 7th day, news came from the liner that the meat reserves were enough. If they could be preserved for a long time, they would have enough food for the next half a month. Upon receiving the news, Tan Xiao immediately ordered to stop hunting and return to the liner. During these 7 days, He also quietly hunted a large number of wild beasts and put them all into his interspatial ring. Even if the beasts' carcasses on the liner had rotted for many days, the carcasses in his interspatial ring were enough for everyone to eat for some time. Chapter 8:16. South China Sea, Clam Island. When a large freighter docked at the northern port, Yuan Yi, who had received the news in advance, had been waiting for a long time. He stood tall and straight as he saw Tang Xiu floating down from the ship. He hurriedly walked forward a few steps and greeted, "You're finally back, boss." Tang Xiu let out an indifferent smile and said, "I was a bit delayed on the way back because my previous actions were a bit too big. I've brought the people you need. Tell them to stay here and help you later." Yuan Yi looked pleasantly surprised and quickly asked, "Where are they?" Tang Xiu turned around and quietly waited for several seconds. Then he raised his arm and pointed to the direction of the freighter and smilingly said, "It's them." Yuan Yi looked at the direction where Tang Xiu's finger pointed. When he saw a line of men and women, Caucasians, blacks, and Asians lined up, the expression on his face suddenly turned extremely marvelous. After a few glances, he looked at Tang Xiu and forced a smile. "Are you kidding me, boss? We must train these children into the most elite cultivators and build an army of cultivators. Where did you get so many foreigners? Do they know how to cultivate immortality?" Tang Xiu nodded and said, "I've taught them immortal cultivation techniques. 5 of them have already entered the early stage of qi refining. Give them some time and use some cultivation resources on them. I believe it won't take long for most of them to become immortal cultivators." Yuan Yi helplessly said, "They are all beginners, boss. How can they teach others?" "You." Tang Xiu raised his hand and said, "Don't you want to know their origin?" "Origin?" Yuan Yi stared blankly for a moment. With a confused look, he looked up at the foreign men and women coming down from the freighter. 10 seconds later, his pupils suddenly shrunk and a light burst out from his eyes. A few familiar faces were clearly captured by him. "Boss Yu, where did you find these demons and ghosts? These bastards?" Tang Xiu raised his hand to interrupt Yuan Yi and thoughtfully asked, "Do you know them?" Yuan Yi groaned weakly and said with a wry smile, "I know a few of them. Some of them are my friends who fought alongside me, and some are my enemies on the battlefield. As for the other 2, although I haven't had much contact with them, they're also extremely vicious people. None of them are easy to deal with. They're prisoners I bought from Israel's labor camp 1319, said Tang Xiu with a faint smile. I used some means to subdue them. They will be the peripheral members of our everlasting feast hall in the future. Except for Spectre, the rest will be under your management. Hiss. Even though Yuan Yi had a strong will, he was still shocked by Tang Xiu's words. A horrified look flashed in his eyes as he hurriedly asked, Labor Camp 1319 is the most terrifying large-scale prison in the world. All the prisoners there are highly dangerous felons, and nearly all of them are sentenced to at least 100 years. Boss, you actually bought so many criminals from there? Tang Xiu laughed and said, Money makes the world go round. It's not difficult to do it by using some means and flexing your muscles. Yuan Yi suddenly understood, but he still forced a smile and said, Boss, you're really making things difficult for me by giving me this group of demons and monsters. Although I'm confident that I can defeat them, they are unruly and ruthless. It's too difficult to manage them. All of their lives are in my hands, said Tang Xiu. Anyone who dares to disobey your order will only meet a dead end. My request is that when you train those children, you train them as well. According to the harshest military management in the world, strive to grind down their unruly characters as soon as possible, so that they can become qualified members of the everlasting feast hall. Yuan Ye's expression moved and he immediately said, Then there's no problem. Tang Xiu took a deep breath and slowly said, Keep in mind that you must repeatedly brainwash them when you manage them. Make them pledge their loyalty to the everlasting feast hall and me. I don't want their joining to affect the internal harmony of the everlasting feast hall in the future. I'll do my best, said Yuan Yi with a forced smile. Tang Xiu was silent for a moment before he suddenly said, I'll leave Zidane, Feng Yang, Shui Gui, He Wuya, and Yi Shisan to help you for the time being. You can contact me directly if there's any problem you can't solve. Yuan Yi knew that Zidane and the other four were selected to be Tan Xiu's personal bodyguards. They were the elites of the Everlasting Feast Hall, and any one of them was much stronger than him. Therefore, the worry in his heart finally dissipated without a trace. Boss, with these 5 people staying to help me, I can definitely train these demons and monsters you brought out of Labor Camp 1319 into qualified elite soldiers of the Everlasting Feast Hall. Tan Xiu patted Yuan Yi's shoulder and looked at the people who quickly lined up in front of him. Then he said in a deep voice, "Let me introduce you. This is Yuan Yi, and he'll be the supreme commander of your stay on Clam Island. From this moment on, their orders are my orders, and you must obey them unconditionally. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless." Understood. Most of them respectfully complied. However, 2 middle-aged men in the team stepped forward with strange expressions. "Who told you to come out? Go back." Mo stepped forward to block the 2 men and berated them. "We have something to say," said one of them loudly. Tan Xiu narrowed his eyes as he looked at the 2 men and said, "I don't know if you've undergone military management training, but remember this from now on. You must report to me if you want to speak, and you can only leave the team without permission. Both of you come here." Mo indifferently glanced at the 2 men and immediately stepped aside. Killstrom and Stan Matthew were the names of these 2 men. As they came to the front of Tang Xiu and Yuan Yi, Killstrom said, "We know this commander you just mentioned, boss. We've fought side by side with him before. We're well aware of his combat prowess. He's indeed very powerful, but there's still a gap between him and me. Since he can become a commander, I think I can too." With a strange smile, Tan Xiu looked at Stan Matthew and asked, "Do you also have the same idea?" "That's right." Stan Matthew nodded without hesitation. "We're Yuan Yi's friends, but we don't want him to be our immediate superior." Tan Xiu smiled and said, "Yuan Yi, since these 2 friends of yours who fought side by side with you are not convinced and think that you don't deserve to be their commanding officer, shouldn't you say something?" Yuan Yi knew the characters of his 2 friends. A confident smile appeared on his face as he strode toward them. He stretched out his arms and smilingly said, "Killstrom, Stan Matthew, I thought you 2 bastards had died long ago. I didn't expect you to be alive and kicking in front of me now." After a manly hug, Killstrom let out a strange smile and said, "We asked you to stay in the team back then, but you insisted on leaving. You even cut off contact with us all these years. It turns out that this is your lair. Now I admire Boss more and more because even a guy like you is willing to be loyal to him." "I'm from the Everlasting Feast Hall, and I'm also Boss's man," said Yuan Yi. "In my eyes, I'm Boss's man when I'm alive and my ghost when I'm dead." Stan Matthew grinned and said, "Cut the crap. We'll catch up later, brothers. Since you want to be our commander, you have to defeat us first. Let me tell you, we're much stronger than we were back then." Yuan Yi raised his brows and grinned. "A scholar who has been away for 3 days must be looked at in a new light. I guess that you've become stronger, but in my opinion, the gap between you and me is too big. If you want me to clean you up, I won't be stingy. But remember, don't cry if you lose in the end. Cry your ass." Stan Matthew cursed with a smile and instantly launched an attack at Yuan Yi. His fists whistled and his moves were particularly ruthless. Nearly all of his attacks were aimed at Yuan Yi's vital parts. Killstrom didn't rush to act, but folded his arms and watched the fight between the 2 men. He was stronger than Stan Matthew, so he knew very well that as long as Stan Matthew could defeat Yuan Yi, he wouldn't have any problems. There was no need to compete anymore. BM, Yuan Yi dodged more than a dozen moves in a row. Finally, he let out a strange laugh. In an instant, he counterattacked with a punch, bombarding Stan Matthew's chest. Following that, he whipped out his leg and hit the side of Stan Matthew's face, sending his head flying 7 or 8 meters away before heavily smashing onto the beach. "I only used 30% of my strength." Yuan Yi grinned. Killstrom was dumbfounded. He never expected that Yuan Yi would directly defeat Stan Matthew as soon as he started his counterattack. What's more, he didn't expect that Yuan Yi would say that he only used 30% of his strength. "Let me try." Killstrom instantly pounced and attacked Yuan Yi with both fists without any reservation. Yuan Yi smiled confidently and instantly put his right hand behind his back, only using his left hand to block Killstrom's attack. His footsteps constantly changed his position, and finally, after a dozen moves, his left hand directly caught Killstrom's incoming fist. Down. A lightning-fast kick instantly landed on Killstrom's chest. As Killstrom was sent flying back 7 to 8 meters, Yuan Yi's figure flashed. All the prisoners only saw a blur before they saw Yuan Yi appear before Killstrom. Old friend, you have indeed made some progress. However, compared to me, the gap is too big. However, don't be discouraged. Since you chose to follow boss, you will become as strong as me in the future. After saying that, Yuan Yi stretched out his hand and looked at Killstrom, who was clutching his chest with a pale face. After the other party slightly gasped for breath, Yuan Yi pulled him up from the ground. Tan Xiu faintly smiled and said, "Since you have been defeated, you no longer have the qualifications to stop Yuan Yi from becoming your highest officer, right? During the time you stay on Clam Island, you must obey his orders. Anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy." Understood. Chapter 8:17. A few days later, Tan Xiu returned to Jingmen Island. After leaving Spectre in the Everlasting Feast Hall, he accompanied Gu Yan, for a few days and then hurried to Qingqing Mountain with Mo and the others. Before leaving, he had contacted Long Zhenglin, but the result was disappointing. Although Long Zhenglin already knew Wang Tao's whereabouts after arriving at Qingqing Mountain, the other party had always avoided him. Red silk flower. It was one of the best main ingredients for refining the body refining elixir, the blood-seizing pill. It had an extremely strong compatibility, and also had a terrifying fission ability. These two effects were excellent for improving the physical strength of cultivators. Tan Xiu was eager to break through to the star's tyrannical body circulation realm. He knew very well that once he broke through to the qi and blood circulation realm, he would be comparable to ordinary nascent soul stage cultivators. They rushed all the way. Tan Xiu, Mo, and the others finally arrived at Qingqing Mountain, and came to a small town full of classical style. Qinglin County. Sichuan was a very remote place geographically, but its prosperity was comparable to some economically prosperous small counties in the south. There were not many permanent residents here, but it was a famous tourist attraction in the country, and would welcome a large number of tourists from all over the world every season of the year. On the wide road, 2 taxis drove into Qinglin County. Tan Xiu, who was sitting in the second taxi, watched the scenery outside, especially the looming mountain corridor in the distance. He fell in love with this place the first time he came here. Suddenly, Tan Xiu was surprised to find that the billboards on the roadside, buses, and even the high-rise buildings in the surrounding were all hung with a poster of a celebrity. "Is Zhang Xinya very popular in your county, sir?" The taxi driver was a man who was not good with words, but upon hearing Tan Xiu's inquiry, his interest was piqued. A smile appeared on his tanned face as he said, "More than half a month ago, the people here could only see the news about the big star Zhang Xinya on TV and computers. But ever since the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex is about to open for business, the news about Zhang Xinya coming to our place has been widely reported by the media. Even the big boss of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex has spent a lot of money for publicity." Surprised, Tan Xiu said, "It's just the opening of a villa district. There's no need to invite a superstar, right? There was no need to advertise it so intensely, was there? After all, this is a small county." The taxi driver smiled and said, "Little brother, do you think that our small county isn't worth inviting a superstar to help us?" Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "I just think it's a bit too exaggerated." The taxi driver said, "To be honest, it's not exaggerated at all. The Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex is the most upscale villa complex in Qinglin County. Many rich people from other places come here to buy villas. It's just that you don't know the location of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex, else you'd be interested in it if you had the money." "Tell me about it," asked Tan Xiu. The Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex is built halfway up the highest peak of Qingqing Mountain, said the taxi driver with a smile. It's not in our Qinglin County. 5 or 6 kilometers to the north from here is the foot of the highest peak of the mountain. The highest peak has been built into a high-end community with dining, entertainment, culture, and many other elements. Whoever can live there will have a status symbol. Of course, the most important thing is that the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex is also within the tourist attractions of Qingqing Mountain. It's just that ordinary tourists don't have the right to enter the villa complex. Tan Xiu suddenly understood and smilingly said, "It seems that the big boss who built the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex is a great figure." "That's natural. He's the richest man in our Qinglin County, Wang Xuegong," said the taxi driver with a smile. "Qingqing Taoist Temple? Where's this Qingqing Taoist Temple?" Tan Xiu's expression moved and he asked, "Is it also within the tourist attractions?" "It's far away. It's in the Qingqing Mountain." The taxi driver shook his head. "Ordinary tourists won't go there. Only a few tourists with high faith will go there to offer incense." Tan Xiu nodded and no longer asked about the Qingqing Taoist Temple. He returned to the previous topic and asked, "Did Zhang Xinya really come to your Qinglin County?" "Not yet," answered the taxi driver. "The opening of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex is on June 28, the day after tomorrow. So we don't know if Zhang Xinya has come or not." Tan Xiu nodded and shifted his gaze to the window. He never thought that he would be able to come to this small town with Zhang Xinya one day. However, he didn't plan to see Zhang Xinya, nor did he have any interest in the Emperor Gao's villa complex. It was best to avoid Zhang Xinya if possible. He was very afraid of emotional debt. Zhang Xinya was obviously interested in him. He had received more than a dozen calls from Zhang Xinya in the last few months, but he just gave a perfunctory reply every time. Qinglin County, Red Riding Hood Auto Trade City. After getting off the taxi, Tan Xiu found a tea house near the Auto Trade City's gate, while Mo and Jin Shi entered the Auto Trade City. Since they wanted to travel here, it was necessary to have a car. To save trouble, Tan Xiu decided to buy 2 cars directly. Half an hour later, Long Zhenglin ran into the tea house while panting. When he saw Tan Xiu sitting by the window, he ran over and sat in front of Tan Xiu. Then he picked up the tea that Tan Xiu had poured in advance and drank it all down his throat. Then he said with a satisfied expression, "You finally came, big bro. I've been staying in this godforsaken place for more than a month. I've tried all kinds of methods, but I just couldn't see that bastard Wang Tao." "Tell me, where's that Wang Tao now?" asked Tan Xiu with a smile. "I heard that that brat directly locked himself in his house in Qinglin County after he came back from another place," said Long Zhenglin. "It's been a month or 2, yet he's like a young lady from a noble family in ancient times. He doesn't go out at all, and I can't even see his shadow. I've visited him more than a dozen times, but I was driven out by his bodyguards every time." "Are you sure he's at home?" asked Tan Xiu. Long Zhenglin looked around and found that no one was paying attention to them. Then he lowered his voice and said, "I can't be 100% sure, but the news that he's at home is pretty much correct. I've been hiding near his house to observe almost every day these days and found 2 doctors from Qinglin County Hospital going in and out 7 or 8 times. I wanted to bribe those 2 doctors, but they didn't want to tell me what they were doing at Wang Tao's house." "Is Wang Tao very powerful in Qinglin County?" asked Tan Xiu in surprise. "He's more than powerful. He's like a crown prince," said Long Zhenglin. "His father, Wang Xuegong, is the richest man in Qinglin County. He has both money and connections, and the locals call him the local tyrant of Qinglin County." "Wang Xuegong?" A surprised look flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes. He came to Qinglin County this time because he wanted to buy the red silk flower from Wang Tao. Wang Tao bought it for 12 million yuan, and he was willing to buy it at 10 times or even 100 times the price. But if Wang Tao was the son of the richest man in Qinglin County, then it was likely that he wasn't short of money. It would be very difficult to get what he wanted if he only bought it with money. "Does this Wang Tao have any special hobbies?" "Yeah, he likes women," said Long Zhenglin with a strange smile. "Women?" Tan Xiu stared blankly and eventually shook his head with a headache. He could have used a lot of women if he was in the immortal world, since brothels were everywhere in the immortal world, and there were countless prostitutes in the closet. But this was Earth. Although there were some good-looking women who were willing to become prostitutes, it was not easy to find one in this small county. The most important thing was that Wang Tao wouldn't be interested in ordinary women given his wealth. Does he have any other hobbies aside from women? I don't know about that. Long Zhenglin shook his head. Tan Xiao took a deep breath and slowly said, "Let's take a break today and learn about the situation here. I'll personally go to Wang Tao's house tomorrow morning and hope to buy the red silk flower. Let's use the hard way if the soft way doesn't work, eldest brother," said Long Zhenglin. "Wang Tao may be a martial artist and has a lot of bodyguards, but I believe he's far worse than you." Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "We're not bandits, and we can't do things like robbing houses. Unless Wang Tao isn't a good person, we can only find a way to make a deal with him. If he really doesn't want to sell it, I'm afraid we can only leave in disappointment since he won't compromise no matter what we do." Half a day later, Tan Xiao and Long Zhenglin left together and stayed in the most high-end 5-star Simbao Hotel in Qinglin County. Long Zhenglin booked a presidential suite in advance since it wasn't the tourist season. On the 12th floor, in the beige-carpeted corridor, Zhang Xiaoyu was carrying some shopping bags with a worried look on her delicate face. When she was about to reach the elevator, the door suddenly opened. Ha! Zhang Xiaoyu could clearly see a group of men coming out from the inside, especially the young man in the front. She faintly felt that he looked familiar, but she didn't want to provoke any trouble in this unfamiliar place, so she turned around and directly entered the stairs. Half a minute later, Zhang Xiaoyu quietly poked her head out from the corner of the stairs. Seeing that the group of people had already walked to the depths of the corridor, she immediately felt relieved. However, the confused look on her delicate face didn't diminish, and instead became more and more intense. She felt that she should have seen that young man somewhere, but she couldn't remember where she had seen him for a while. Forget it. Let's send Xinya's clothes to the dry cleaner first. This great aunt has been in a bad mood recently. If I leave Qinglin County the day after tomorrow, and the clothes haven't been cleaned, I'll be nagging again. Zhang Xiaoyu shook her head. She came to the elevator and opened the door. Just as she pressed the button for the first floor, a light suddenly flashed in her mind. I remember now. Chapter 8:18. Zhang Xiaoyu took the elevator to the first floor, but she didn't step out of the elevator. Realizing that no one was taking this elevator, she took the elevator back to the 12th floor. Carrying the shopping bag, he hurriedly ran back to the door of the 1206 presidential suite and knocked on the door. "Xiaoyu, didn't you send the clothes to the dry cleaner? Why did you come back?" Inside the room, Zhang Xinya was holding her phone with an earphone in one ear. Zhang Xiaoyu squeezed into the room and said excitedly, "Sister, guess who I just met in the corridor?" Zhang Xinya rolled her eyes coquettishly and casually closed the door with a lack of interest. She walked back to the sofa in the hall and nestled on it as if she had no bones. She put the other earphone on her ear and said listlessly, "Who cares who you met? Hurry up and dry clean the clothes. If you can't get them before we leave the day after tomorrow, I'll punish you by making you stare at me while I eat." Zhang Xiaoyu threw all the shopping bags in her hand on a single-seater sofa. Then she dashed to Zhang Xinya's side and sat down, saying with a faint smile, "Sis, I dare to swear to tonight's dinner that you'll definitely regret it if you don't listen to me." Saying, she found that Zhang Xinya's earphones were very loud, so she immediately removed one of the earphones and repeated the words. Zhang Xinya helplessly said, "Hurry up and tell me if you want to. I'm not in a good mood right now, so listening to songs can distract me." "I saw the owner of the photo on your mobile screen," said Zhang Xiaoyu seriously. "Phone screen? Master?" Zhang Xinya thought about it casually. Just as she was about to put on her headphones again, her stunning expression suddenly froze. Even the hand that was just raised to her ear froze. "Tang. Tan Xiao?" Zhang Xinya abruptly got up. She stared at Zhang Xiaoyu and hurriedly asked, "You see that I'm in a bad mood, so you want to tease me? Or did you really see Tan Xiao?" Zhang Xiaoyu seriously said, "Sis, I dare to swear that I'm not joking with you. Just now in the corridor, I really saw the original owner of the photo on your phone screen. He was very handsome, and there were 6 or 7 men with him." Zhang Xinyao was overjoyed and said, "He also came to Qinglin County? Also staying in this hotel? They also live on the same floor? Xiaoyu, quickly tell me, which room is he staying in?" Zhang Xiaoyu shook her head and said, "I don't know which room he stayed in. I saw so many men just now and thought they were not good people, so I hid in the side. Later, I only saw their backs and didn't see which room they went to." Zhang Xinya quickly took off the earphone on her other ear and rushed out of the room with the mobile phone in her hand. She came to the empty corridor and paced back and forth for a few steps. Then, she saw Zhang Xiaoyu hurriedly come out and said, "Xiaoyu, go to the cashier on the first floor and ask where Tang Xiu lives. Forget it, I'll go there myself." Saying, she dashed towards the elevator. Inside the presidential suite number 1208, Tan Xiu took 2 cans of beer from the refrigerator. He threw one to Long Zhenglin and said, "I asked you to inquire about the other person. Do you have any results?" "Wang Rui?" Long Zhenglin asked curiously. "Yes, it's Wang Rui," said Tan Xiu. "I heard that Wang Rui is from Qingqing Mountain, but I don't know his specific origin. But that guy is very powerful and should be a rich and powerful man. His style is similar to Wang Tao's. He always brings a lot of bodyguards with him, and is very flamboyant. I've inquired about him several times, but I didn't get any news about him." Long Zhenglin shook his head. "I don't think he's from Qinglin County." Tan Xiu's expression suddenly moved, and a thought emerged in his mind. He immediately stood up and said, "You stay here and wait for me. I'm going to see that Wang Tao now. Maybe I have a way to get the bonus flower from him." A few minutes later, Tan Xiu left the hotel with Mo. He didn't see Zhang Xinya, who was asking the cashier for information at the cashier's desk. Of course, Zhang Xinya was looking forward to the cashier's reply and didn't look back to see Tan Xiu. Qinglin County's South City. It was a villa with its own entrance and courtyard, with a total of 3 floors. This kind of European-style villa looked particularly imposing. The surrounding walls were 2 meters high and inlaid with sharp-colored glass that exuded a blurred luster under the setting sun. Outside the gate of the courtyard, 2 security guards in black uniforms were puffing out clouds of smoke, smoking cigarettes, and chatting from time to time. Honk honk. The sound of a car's horn alarmed the 2 security guards inside. They extinguished their cigarettes and one of them stepped out of the shed. He looked at the brand new black car parked outside and asked in a deep voice, "What are you doing here? This is a private residence. Outsiders can't enter without permission." Mo got off the car and ignored the security guard. He went to the back and opened the door. As Tan Xiu stepped out of the car, he looked around and then looked at the security guard and said, "I'm looking for Wang Rui." The security guard stared blankly and frowned. "Who are you?" "This is the residence of our little boss, Wang Tao. Wang Rui doesn't live here." "Sure enough, I know you." Tan Xiu secretly chuckled inwardly, but his expression remained unchanged as he said, "I know Wang Rui doesn't live here, so I'm going to see Wang Tao first. Inform him that I'm Tan Xiu." The security guard looked at Tan Xiu suspiciously. From Mo's attitude toward Tan Xiu, as well as Tan Xiu's words and actions, he faintly felt that this young man's identity was not ordinary. After hesitating for a while, he nodded and said, "Wait here first. I'll go inside and ask." Inside the villa, the pale-faced Wang Tao was nestled on the sofa, exuding a lazy aura. Although his eyes were watching the TV, his pupils were slack and his eyes were unfocused. It was obvious that he wasn't watching the TV series. "Young Master Wang, the security guard just came in to inform you that someone is visiting." A woman dressed in a gray robe with a capable appearance walked in and said. Wang Tao came back to his senses and asked with a confused expression, "What did you say?" The woman repeated what she just said and then said, "I heard from the security guard that the person he was looking for was Wang Rui. But after learning that Wang Rui doesn't live here, he said that he wants to see you." Wang Tao frowned and was silent for a few seconds, then said, "Since he's looking for Wang Rui, then let him come in." "All right." A few minutes later, Tan Xiu strode into the villa's door and saw the young man nestled on the sofa. A strange light flashed in his eyes. He was sure that this young man was Wang Tao, who seemed to be ill. Who are you? Wang Tao sat upright and looked at Tan Xiao and asked. Tan Xiao's mouth curled up, and he lightly smiled. Tan Xiao of the Magnificent Tang Corporation. The Magnificent Tang Corporation? Wang Tao stared blankly and his expression slightly changed. After putting on his slippers, he stood up and smilingly said, "Ah, so you're the big boss of the Magnificent Tang Corporation, Tan Xiao. No wonder I felt that your name sounded familiar when I heard it. Boss Tang, how come a big shot like you came to a small place like ours? And to my house?" Tan Xiao shook hands with him. After the two of them sat on the sofa, Tan Xiao said, "Actually, I came here to see Wang Rui. After all, he saved my people in the battle in the South China Sea. He also lost some of his subordinates, so I came here specifically to thank him and discuss some other matters." The South China Sea? The war? Wang Tao suddenly recalled something and hurriedly said, "You mean my brother ran into trouble in the South China Sea because he saved your people? So he fought with those ability users?" "That's right." Tan Xiao nodded. Wang Tao looked at Tan Xiao with a bit more respect than before. Although he didn't know the specific details of the incident, he knew that those powerful figures in Qingqing Mountain suffered heavy losses because of it. As a result, his big brother, Wang Rui, was severely punished and was locked up in the mountain's dungeon to reflect on his mistakes. I called Wang Rui, but his mobile was turned off, so I couldn't contact him for the time being. Tan Xiao lightly smiled. "I heard him talking about you, so I came to Qinglin County to find you, hoping to get some news from you. Also, the elder who was with him at that time was seriously injured, so I happened to get a medicine that has a very good healing effect." In an instant, Wang Tao no longer doubted Tan Xiao's words. His big brother, Wang Rui, was indeed accompanied by an elder from Qingqing Mountain who was responsible for his safety. He heard that the elder was indeed injured after he came back. "Boss Tang, are you also a cultivator? Didn't your big brother tell me about my identity?" Tan Xiao nodded. "I'm not qualified to cultivate, so I don't know much about it." Wang Tao forced a smile. "My big brother was punished after he came back and was locked up in Qingqing Mountain's dungeon to reflect on his mistakes, so he didn't tell me about it." Big brother Tang, may I ask if the medicine you got is only effective for internal injuries? What's wrong?" Tan Xiao smiled. "Your condition looks very serious, but you haven't found a cure? You can see that I'm sick." Wang Tao was surprised. "How can I be a cultivator if I don't have such eyesight?" Tan Xiao said. "I can tell that the source of your illness should be in your kidneys just by looking at your complexion." "A cultivator?" Wang Tao was shaken inwardly and a horrified look burst out from his eyes. He jumped up from the sofa nearly in an instant and exclaimed, "You're a cultivator? A cultivator who can cultivate to become an immortal?" "It's indeed possible to ascend and become an immortal if your cultivation reaches a high level," Tan Xiao said with a smile. Wang Tao gulped down his saliva and asked with a face full of hope, "Big brother Tang, do you think I can become a cultivator? And my illness, can you help me cure it? If you can cure me, I'll definitely repay you." Chapter 819. As the saying goes, if you want to take something, you must first give it. Tang Xiao was secretly satisfied with Wang Tao's attitude. As long as he could cure the man's illness, it would be a great favor even if it was not enough for Wang Tao to immediately hand over the red silk flower to him. But it would still play a positive role. Tan Xiao figured out Wang Tao's illness through the diagnosis of traditional Chinese medicine. But he didn't expect that the disease would appear in Wang Tao's body. Kidney deficiency and yang deficiency. He should have symptoms of impotence and premature ejaculation. Tan Xiao loosened his hand and looked at Wang Tao with a faint smile. An awkward expression appeared on Wang Tao's face as he asked while rubbing his hands, "Is that all you can see?" "Of course it's more than that." Tan Xiao shook his head. "You've been infected with a virus similar to the venereal disease, but it's more serious than that. It should cause your lower body to begin to inflame, ooze pus, and even ulcerate. If it's not treated in time, you'll become a living eunuch, and your life will be in danger." "You're a god, big brother Tang," said Wang Tao with a pale face. "I didn't expect that a cultivator would know Chinese medicine and be so proficient in it." You're right. I've been to several large hospitals, and the diagnosis is the same as what you said. However, they can't help me cure the infectious virus, and can only temporarily suppress it with drugs. I originally planned to go to the imperial capital to seek a doctor after the opening ceremony of my Golden Goblet Emperor Ga's Villa complex. If it still doesn't work, then I'll go abroad for treatment. Tan Xiao secretly felt lucky that he came to Qinglin County in time, else it would not be easy for him to find this guy if he really went to the imperial capital or abroad for treatment. I can cure this disease. Wang Tao was overjoyed and hurriedly said, I'll pay any price if you can really cure my illness, Big Brother Tang. You'll be my great benefactor from now on. Tan Xiao waved his hand and smilingly said, You're exaggerating. I came to Qingqing Mountain this time to repay your kindness. Since Wang Rue is your brother, helping you is equivalent to helping him. Wang Tao stared blankly and awkwardly said, I think you misunderstood, Big Brother Tang. Wang Rue is not my biological brother. He's my uncle's son, a cousin of mine. Tan Xiao deliberately furrowed his brows and looked deep. Just as Wang Tao was afraid that Tan Xiao would go back on his words and was about to speak, Tan Xiao nodded and said, Even if you're not blood brothers, I can still treat you. To be honest, since I met you, I felt that we hit it off very well. Even without Wang Rue, as long as you need me, I can help you cure it. As for repayment, as long as you treat me as a friend in the future, that will be the best repayment. Hit it off. Friends. Wang Tao was shocked by Tan Xiao's words. He didn't expect that he would have such a powerful affinity. It was his first time meeting the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss. Yet the other party felt that he was congenial with him. How could such a great thing fall on his head? Actually, I have another identity, said Tan Xiao with a smile. I'm a doctor at Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. There have been many news reports about me. You can find it if you surf the internet. Star City Chinese Medical Hospital? A doctor? Wang Tao found it a bit inconceivable. The dignified, magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss, as well as a cultivator, unexpectedly ran to a hospital to be a doctor? After thinking for a while, he quickly took out his mobile and began to search for the keywords Star City Chinese Medical Hospital's doctor. After a while, a lot of reports about the hospital were clearly seen by him. Most of them mentioned the name, Young Divine Dr. Tan Xiao. Really? Wang Tao looked up and asked with a blank expression. Big Brother Tang, with your identity, how could you run to a Chinese medical hospital to be a doctor? That's right. I'm the magnificent Tang Corporation's boss and also a cultivator, said Tan Xiao. But in my opinion, there's no distinction between high and low professions. Since I have this ability, I must display it. In my spare time, I go to the Chinese medical hospital to treat patients. There are a lot of patients and wounded people who have been cured by me. Just my identity as a doctor allows me to save the dying and heal the wounded, treat more people, and help more people. Brother Wang Tao, don't you think that you're also very happy when you're helping others? Wang Tao had learned the word helping others since he was a child, but he had never deliberately helped others, nor had he ever felt happy when he was helping others. Tan Xiao seemed to be aware of Wang Tao's thoughts and spoke again. To be honest, I used to see those dying patients in the hospital and the wounded wailing in pain. When they were in despair and fear, I would stretch out my hand to save them. It really gave me a sense of achievement. You can imagine that there are injured people lying in front of you, covered in blood, but you still manage to save their lives in the end. You can then face their grateful eyes, and some of them even want to kneel down and kowtow to thank you. How happy would you be? Do you think you're happy? Along with Tan Xiao's words, such a scene appeared in Wang Tao's mind. A few seconds later, he woke up from his fantasy, and the smile on the corner of his mouth slowly disappeared. Indeed, I'm very happy. Tan Xiao smiled and said, Let's make another example. Since I feel that you're a kindred spirit, and I feel that you can be my friend, I feel happy when I have the ability to cure you when you're ill. In other words, if you're a very capable doctor and you cure your loved ones when they're seriously ill, won't you feel happy and satisfied? Wang Tao was completely touched by Tan Xiao's words. He didn't expect that Tan Xiao would be so sentimental that he even regarded him as a loved one. We're definitely brothers. Wang Tao looked at Tan Xiao and seriously said, I won't say anything about repaying you. Please treat me Big Brother Tang. Regardless of whether you can cure my illness or not, you'll always be my brother in the future. I dare not say anything else, but I'll definitely do anything for my brother. Good. You're a man of character. I really didn't misjudge you. Tan Xiao laughed aloud. Shortly after, Tan Xiao took out a pen and paper and quickly wrote a prescription. He handed it to Wang Tao and said, Tell your men to buy the herbs according to this prescription. Remember, you must buy high-quality medicinal herbs, preferably wild ones. I'll start decocting Chinese medicine for you after you buy them. Apply it to the infected parts, and you'll be able to remove the infectious virus. Having said that, he wrote another prescription and handed it to Wang Tao again, saying, The medicinal herbs required don't need to be particularly expensive. You can buy a lot of them with just a few hundred yuan. I'll cook it for you after I buy it. It can nourish your kidneys and treat the symptoms of kidney deficiency and yang deficiency. I dare not say anything else, but as long as you drink a few of them, it can greatly improve the quality of your sexual life. Drinking it for a month can make you change your bride every day and become a groom every night. Furthermore, you'll be the groom multiple times a night. That's great. Wang Tao was overjoyed and looked at Tan Xiao with particularly fiery eyes. After giving the 2 prescriptions to the woman and instructing her to buy the herbs herself, Wang Tao personally took care of making tea. He also asked his friend to bring back the best Cuban cigar from abroad and personally lit it for Tan Xiao. Big Brother Tang, since you've come from afar, just stay here. We brothers hit it off the first time we met, so I want to get closer to you. It's fine if you want to stay here. We brothers have a lot of time to meet each other in the future, said Tan Xiao with a smile. But I can't leave for the time being. I must stay here with you. Even if you drive me away now, I can't go. Although Wang Tao didn't want to drive Tan Xiao away, he still looked confused upon hearing it and curiously asked, Why? You want to wait for my big brother here for the time being? Didn't you say it before? Tan Xiao snappily said. Your big brother is locked up in the mountains dungeon. How can I wait for him here? I'm staying here for the time being to wait for your people to buy the herbs. I'm going to boil the Chinese medicine for you myself. Wang Tao suddenly came to his senses and awkwardly said, Look at this pig brain of mine. It's true that I'm smart all my life but muddle-headed this time. Big Brother Tang, we brothers hit it off the first time we met today. I'll order my people to prepare good wine and dishes later. Let's not go home until we're drunk. Let's drink tea and eat dinner tonight. Tan Xiao shook his head and said, Let's forget about drinking wine. Big Brother Tang, could it be that you think the wine I prepared is not good enough? Wang Tao quickly said. It's true that there's a big gap between it and the god's nectar produced by your magnificent Tang Corporation. You're really smart all your life but muddle-headed this time. Tan Xiao helplessly said. I think you just like to indulge in flights of fancy and blindly think. Why don't you drink wine? That's because you're going to drink Chinese medicine today. How are you going to drink Chinese medicine if you're drunk? How are you going to cure your illness? Instantly, Wang Tao was petrified. His face was as red as a monkey's and he couldn't get over the awkward atmosphere for a while. Outside the courtyard, the woman who had just walked out of the courtyard with 2 Chinese medicine prescriptions saw a Mercedes-Benz MPV coming from a distance. The familiar license plate made her instantly realize that the big boss had arrived. Sure enough, as the door opened, Wang Xuegong, who was wearing a black suit, came out of the car. He looked at the woman and asked, Little Tao, are you home? He's at home, said the woman quickly. Wang Xuegong nodded and was about to enter the door when he suddenly stopped and asked, What are you going to do? There's a guest at home. Young Master Wang asked me to get the medicine according to the prescription given by the guest, said the woman. What guest? Wang Xuegong frowned and asked. I don't know him. The woman shook her head and said, I wasn't there when young Master Wang talked to him. Wang Xuegong's brows furrowed deeper, and he said with dissatisfaction, Give me the prescription. The woman quickly handed the prescription to Wang Xuegong. She knew that this big boss in front of her used to be a barefoot doctor. Because he coincidentally cured the illness of a big shot in the city, he began to have a meteoric rise. Chapter 820. Wang Xuegong took the 2 prescriptions. When he read all the names of the medicinal herbs on them, his face instantly turned gloomy. He clenched his fists, causing the 2 prescriptions to be crumpled. That unfilial son got a venereal disease? The woman's expression changed. She immediately replied with a bit of fear and trepidation. The doctor said that he's just infected with a virus, not a venereal disease. But what? Wang Xuegong angrily shouted. But that virus is even more powerful than the venereal disease virus. Even the specialist doctors in some large hospitals can't treat it, the woman quickly said. Although, the person who wrote these 2 prescriptions for young Master Wang is a bit unreliable, but I don't dare to question him since young Master Wang asked me to buy them. Wang Xuegong snorted angrily. He took the 2 prescriptions and strode into the courtyard. When he came to the villa's living room, his eyes just glanced at Wang Tao and then fell on Tan Xiao. Are you the Chinese medicine practitioner who wrote these 2 prescriptions? Wang Xuegong stood in front of Tan Xiao and asked in a deep voice as he stretched out the 2 prescriptions. Tan Xiao frowned and was about to speak when Wang Tao hurriedly stood up and shouted. What are you doing, Dad? Big brother Tang is my friend, not your subordinate. Don't talk to my friend with such an attitude. Wang Xuegong turned his head and glared at Wang Tao, shouting, Shut the hell up. You're so young, yet you're educating your father? You're not doing your job properly. Not only did you flirt with women, but you even infected me with a venereal disease. I'm not done with this matter. Just wait and see how I'll deal with you later. Wang Tao's face turned pale. But being reprimanded by his father in front of Tan Xiao made him lose his face and immediately said aloud, Dad, do you know who this friend of mine sitting in front of me is? It's indeed my fault that I got infected with this disease. I promise I won't act recklessly in the future, but you can't talk to my friend with such an attitude, can you? Friend. I think he's just a bunch of scoundrels. There are so many swindlers these days. You're still too naive. I'll give you a check, lest you get cheated by others. Furthermore, look at his age. How does he look like someone who knows Chinese medicine? Wang Xuegong sneered. Tan Xiao got up and lightly glanced at Wang Xuegong. Then he looked at the furious Wang Tao and indifferently said, I'm indeed a swindler. I didn't expect to be seen through so easily. Since your father thinks that I don't have the ability and that I came here by cheating, then I can only leave with my tail between my legs. Wang Tao hurriedly stopped Tan Xiao and said with an apologetic expression, Big brother Tang, my dad doesn't know your identity. Please don't be angry. Finished. He looked at Wang Xuegong again and shouted angrily, Dad, I know you judge people by their appearance, but I can tell you for sure that this big brother Tan Xiao in front of you is definitely not a liar. Big brother Tang? He's younger than you, isn't he? You actually call him big brother? Wang Xuegong's anger was replaced by disbelief. I'm calling him big brother, but I'm actually trying to climb up the social ladder with him. You're also an old man in the business world. Don't tell me you really don't know him? Take a closer look at him. Which company is the most popular in the country right now? Wang Xuegong stared blankly. It was the first time he saw his son so uncompromisingly angry at him. He furrowed his brows and carefully thought about it. Then he sneered and said, There are a lot of popular companies in the country now. Who knows which one you're talking about? He's Tan Xiao, the big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation, and the young divine doctor of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. Dad, do you really think that someone with such an identity like Big Brother Tang will come to our house to deceive me? Wang Xuegong stared blankly for a moment. He immediately took out his mobile and quickly searched for the name, Tan Xiao. Quickly, he found the photo of the key name. When he slightly compared it, his complexion greatly changed. A look of shock appeared on his face, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Wang Xuegong wanted to speak, but he didn't know what to say. If he hadn't recognized Tan Xiao's identity, he could have continued to flare up. But the young man in front of him was indeed the big boss of the famous magnificent Tang Corporation, the young divine doctor of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, Tan Xiao. He was a bit restless inside. A proud expression appeared on Wang Tao's face as he said, "Dad, Big Brother Tang actually came here to find my brother. However, he's still locked up in the dungeon of the Qingqing Monastery, so he stayed to treat my illness. You also know my brother's identity. Big Brother Tang and my brother are also very good friends." Wang Rui's friend? Wang Xuegong finally understood why the famous big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation, Tan Xiao, would come to this small place in Qinglin County. He also understood why he appeared in the residence of his good-for-nothing son. In a flash, an awkward expression appeared on his face. He covered his mouth with his fist and coughed dryly. Then he let out a hollow laugh and said, "Tang. Boss Tang, I was rude just now. It's because my good-for-nothing son is infected. Sai, it's all my fault. You're a great man, so please don't lower yourself to my level. In fact, I've long heard of your great name. It can even be said that it's like a thunderclap piercing my ears. I've long wanted to visit you, but I'm just a small businessman, so I'm afraid that I'm not qualified enough, so." Tan Xiao shot him a cold look and said, "Wang Tao and I hit it off the first time we met, and have become very good friends. Since you're his father, I won't lower myself to your level. Also, since you've recognized me now, you should know that I'm also the young divine doctor of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. Those big hospitals can't cure his illness, but I can. If you don't want to delay your son's illness, tell someone to buy the medicinal herbs according to the prescriptions." Yes, yes, yes. Wang Xuegong hurriedly called the woman who came in, and handed her 2 prescriptions. Then he ordered, "Hurry up and buy the herbs. Be sure to buy the best ones." The woman originally didn't believe in Tan Xiao's identity as a Chinese medicine practitioner. But the unforeseen event in front of her finally made her realize that this young man had a very high status. He should be a big shot that even a big boss couldn't afford to offend. After receiving the 2 prescriptions, she didn't dare to delay and hurriedly left. Wang Xuegong turned around and looked at Tan Xiao again. He then said with a smile, "Boss Tang, you're really a man who does great things. The Prime Minister has a big heart, and it's worth me to learn from you. But I don't know why you're looking for my nephew." "Dad." Wang Tao hurriedly called out. Tan Xiao raised his hand to interrupt him and indifferently said, "Since you're Wang Tao's father and a member of the Wangs, I don't want to hide it from you. Wang Rui saved my people in the South China Sea some time ago, so I came here specifically to thank him. Further, I'm not only the owner of the magnificent Tang Corporation, but also the young divine doctor of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. I'm also a cultivator. Others may not know about the situation of cultivators, but I think you should be very clear about it as a member of the Wangs, right?" "A cultivator?" Wang Xuegong's eyes turned as big as a bell as he involuntarily exclaimed. He staggered back a few steps with a face full of shock. "I'm telling you because of my relationship with Wang Rui," said Tan Xiao indifferently. "But I hope no one else will know about this except for you." Wang Xuegong hurriedly waved his hand and said, No, only the 3 of us know about this. We, father and son, will never tell anyone else." Tan Xiao nodded and said, "You don't need to worry about Wang Tao's illness. I guarantee that he'll recover within 7 days. I'll decoct medicine for him later, so you can leave if there's nothing else." Wang Xuegong could see the indifference in Tan Xiao's expression, and was extremely regretful. However, he was finally able to see this great god, Tan Xiao. How could he give up this opportunity to make friends with him? He smiled obsequiously and said, "Boss Tang, I actually came here this time to see what my good-for-nothing son has been doing recently. Secondly, I want him to attend the opening ceremony of our Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex the day after tomorrow. Since you've come to our Qinglin County, it's definitely an honor for our county. I wonder if I can have the honor to invite you to attend the opening ceremony of our Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex?" "I'm not interested." Tan Xiao directly refused. He indeed had no interest in the opening ceremony of this villa complex. On the other hand, it was also because of Zhang Xinya. After all, she was invited by Wang Xuegong, and he didn't want to meet her in Qinglin County. Wang Shuagong was a bit embarrassed, but he still forced a smile and turned to his son, Wang Tao. He even made up his mind that if his son could invite Tan Xiu, then he wouldn't teach this brat a lesson about his venereal disease. Wang Tao was also thinking about this matter at this moment. When he saw his father winking at him, he immediately realized that the opportunity to redeem himself had come. He hurriedly smiled and said, "Big brother Tang, you're this Wang Tao's brother. My family will have a big event soon, so you have to give me some face and join in the fun. It was my dad's fault just now, so please don't be angry." A strange light flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he hesitantly said, "Honestly speaking, I've already forgotten about what happened just now, but I really can't attend the opening ceremony of the villa complex the day after tomorrow, because I still have to go to Qingqing Monastery to see Wang Rue. On one hand, I have to deliver the healing medicine to him and personally thank him. On the other hand, I have something I need his help with." "What kind of help?" asked Wang Tao, confused. "It's not a big deal, actually," said Tan Xiu casually. "It's just that I heard that there are countless precious medicinal herbs in Qingqing Mountain. I recently reached a bottleneck in my cultivation and need 2 particularly precious herbs." Wang Tao looked happy and said without hesitation, "Big brother Tang, I can help you find any medicinal herbs in Qingqing Mountain. Tell me which 2 medicinal herbs." "You can?" asked Tan Xiu hesitantly. "That's right. Of course I can," said Wang Tao proudly. "Ah, I forgot to tell you that my dad used to be a very famous barefoot doctor in this area. He even cured a big shot's illness in the city. I've been influenced by him since I was young, so I can identify a lot of medicinal herbs. I even organize people to search for precious herbs in the mountain every year, and then send them to Qingqing Monastery to exchange for some good stuff." Chapter 821. Upon his arrival, Tan Xiu realized that Wang Tao knew something about Chinese medicine. At the very least, he knew about medicinal herbs. Else, it would be impossible for him to spend 10 million yuan to buy a red silk flower for 12 million yuan. Seeing that the road ahead was almost paved, he deliberately looked pleasantly surprised and asked, "I need a millennium wild ginseng and a red silk flower. Can you help me find them, brother Wang Tao?" Wang Tao stared blankly for a moment before he suddenly patted the back of his head and said with a wry smile, "Big brother Tang, I could have put them in front of you in minutes if you'd come here a month and a half earlier. But now, I can easily take out the millennium wild ginseng, but I gave the red silk flower to my first uncle." "What?" Tan Xiu's expression changed and deep disappointment could be seen in his eyes. He came all the way to Mount Qingqing for the red silk flower in Wang Tao's hand. However, he had given it to his uncle, the deputy abbot of the Qingqing Taoist temple, a month and a half ago, which made him feel helpless. Wang Tao's expression suddenly shifted and he quickly said, "Big brother Tang, I can accompany you to Qingqing Monastery to find my first uncle if you really need the red silk flower. I heard that he also needs the red silk flower, and it seems to have something to do with concocting medicine. But he still lacks several precious medicinal herbs a month and a half ago, so the red silk flower shouldn't have been used up yet. Let's not delay it any further. Shall we go now?" Tan Xiu immediately said. Wang Tao could see the eagerness in Tan Xiu's expression and secretly laughed inside. He wanted to take Tan Xiu to Qingqing Monastery personally for a selfish reason. Firstly, he wanted to show his goodwill to Tan Xiu, and secondly, he wanted his first uncle to know that the red silk flower he gave was really a good thing that even an amazing cultivator like Tan Xiu wanted to get. "How about we go the day after tomorrow, big brother Tang? You see, I still need to treat my illness with Chinese medicine and attend the opening ceremony of my Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex. We'll immediately go to the mountain after the opening ceremony as long as you're willing to wait for me." Tang Xiu pondered for a moment and nodded without a word. He didn't know the location of the Qingqing Monastery. Rather than entering the vast Qingqing mountain to search aimlessly, it would be better to wait for 2 days and let Wang Tao take him there. However, the meaning behind Wang Tao's words was very obvious. He still hoped that he would attend the opening ceremony of their Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex. What a headache! Tan Xiu was keenly aware of the complacency flashing in Wang Tao's eyes. He forced a smile and said, "Where will the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex be held? I will arrive on time the day after tomorrow." At the side, Wang Xuegong's face was filled with ecstasy. Although his business was huge, and he had money and manpower, to the extent that he was known as the local tyrant of Qinglin County, it was still a far cry from those large domestic conglomerates. Even though the magnificent Tang Corporation had been established for less than a year, he knew that it was a very huge company with a development speed akin to riding a rocket. A few months ago, the magnificent Tang Corporation had won a large piece of land in Shanghai, and even invited construction companies from all over the country to bid for the project. His construction company was not qualified to bid at all. It was rumored that only the top 10 large construction companies in the country were qualified to bid. Wang Xuegong thought that he was very rich, but there was still a huge gap between him and the man in front of him. The magnificent Tang Corporation had long been appraised by the industry, and its total value was no less than 10 billion yuan. Among them, Tan Xiu also had some hidden wealth that he was unaware of. If he could invite Tan Xiu to attend the opening ceremony of his Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex, it would definitely cause a big sensation in the real estate industry, and even the entire business world. Therefore, his company's reputation would spread far and wide, and its future development would be smoother. Simbao 5-star Hotel. Inside the presidential suite number 1208, Long Zhenglin was comfortably nestled on the sofa, while imagining the scene of Tan Xiu being refused at the door when he visited Wang Tao. A smile appeared on his rough face. Ding dong. The doorbell rang and Long Zhenglin lazily glanced at the door. He immediately waved to Jin Shi, who was sitting cross-legged in cultivation at the side, and weakly said, "Open the door. Your boss probably came back with his tail between his legs after being refused at the door." Jin Shi let out a hollow smile and walked to the door. He would definitely slap the person if it was someone else who said this, but Long Zhenglin was an exception. After all, he had a very close relationship with his boss, and Jin Shi didn't dare to offend him. "Ah, it's you?" Jin Shi couldn't help but ask in surprise when he saw the slender and graceful Zhang Xinya standing outside the door with an excited look on her face. Zhang Xinya had seen Jin Shi before, so she could tell that Tan Xiu had indeed come to Qinglin County at this moment. Although she was still in a trance, she was full of excitement and quickly asked, "Where's Tan Xiu? I want to see him." "Our boss went out to handle some matters." "He's not here," said Jin Shi. Zhang Xinya took a deep breath and directly squeezed into the room. A disappointed look flashed in her eyes when she saw Long Zhenglin sitting on the sofa. She then asked again, "Where did he go?" "I don't know the whereabouts of our boss," said Jin Shi. "Only Ao went with boss to handle some matters, and we all stayed here to wait." Zhang Xinya was silent for a moment. Then, she took out her mobile and dialed Tan Xiu's number. This time, the phone only rang a few times before it was picked up. "Where are you, Tan Xiu?" "Qingqing Mountain, Qinglin County." Zhang Xinya was delighted. She could clearly feel Tan Xiu's repulsive tone when she called Tan Xiu in the past, but now he directly told her where he was without deceiving her. "I'm also in Qinglin County. I'm now in the presidential suite of the Sunbao 5-star Hotel. I heard from your men that you went out to handle some matters, so I won't disturb you. I'll wait for you here." After saying that, she seemed to be afraid that Tan Xiu wouldn't agree and directly hung up the phone. Long Zhenglin got up from the sofa and looked at Zhang Xinya with a strange expression, saying, "If outsiders knew that the dignified superstar Zhang Xinya is actually waiting for a man in a hotel, I'm afraid that more than half of the men in the world would be jealous, no? I say, have you fallen in love with my big bro?" "That's right. I've fallen in love with Tan Xiu," said Zhang Xinya without concealing anything. Cough cough. Long Zhenglin choked on his own saliva, and was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. "I wouldn't have asked if I knew it earlier. It's because the result will be the same whether I ask or not. My big bro's luck in love affairs is really heaven-defying." "I know he's very lucky in love affairs, but I don't care," said Zhang Xinya. "Anyways, who are you?" Long Zhenglin rolled his eyes and resentfully said, "Didn't Tan Xiu mention me, second young Master Long, to you? I'm his most loyal little brother." A smile appeared on the corner of Zhang Xinya's mouth as she said, "I've seen him before. It turns out that you're his little brother. No wonder you have such a good temperament. There should be many girls who like you, right?" Good temperament? Long Zhonglin's eyes lit up. He immediately clapped and smilingly said, "You really have a good eye, sister-in-law." "That's right. Though I'm not as handsome as Tan Xiao, my temperament is very good. Come have a seat, sister-in-law. Are you thirsty? I'll make some tea for you. Also, do you want to eat some fruits? I'll tell the hotel staff to send them to you right away." "Thank you." Zhang Xinya snickered inwardly. Since Long Zhonglin could come to Qinglin County with Tan Xiao, she could guess that Tan Xiao and Long Zhonglin must have a very good relationship. If she could make Long Zhonglin have a good impression of her, then she would be able to get more news about Tan Xiao. Maybe she could even make Long Zhonglin put in a good word for her. In the past, she had full confidence in herself. But ever since she was alienated by Tan Xiao, she really suffered a blow. Therefore, she could only resort to the means she used in the past. Qinglin County. In Wang Tao's residence, Tan Xiao was quietly boiling Chinese medicine. As the rich fragrance of the medicine permeated every corner of the kitchen, he was thinking about something in silence. At present, what he urgently needed the most was the red silk flower. However, this medicinal herb was too rare. The red silk flower Wang Tao obtained was unexpectedly given to Wang Rui's father, the deputy monastery abbot of the Qingqing Monastery. Tan Xiao didn't know whether he could get it when he went to the Qingqing Monastery the day after tomorrow. Should I exchange it with something? The Qingqing Monastery is an old-school sect. Once I impart the cultivation technique to the Qingqing Monastery's people, the Qingqing Monastery's cultivation resources are bound to be wantonly plundered by the Qingqing Monastery in the future, which will be very disadvantageous to the development of the everlasting feast hall. Medicinal pills? That's a good choice, but I don't know if Wang Rui's father will take a fancy to the medicinal pills I refined. If I use something else, countless thoughts churned inside Tan Xiao's mind. He even put the matter of Zhang Xinya's call to the back of his mind. 10 o'clock in the evening. Tan Xiao watched as Wang Tao took the Chinese medicine and applied the medicinal concoction to the festering area on his body. Then he said, "Take this once a day for half a month. Your illness will be completely cured after half a month. If you want to go with me to the Qingqing Monastery the day after tomorrow, take the medicinal herbs there. You can also endure it there." "No problem." Wang Tao readily agreed. Tan Xiao thought for a while and suddenly asked, "If I list the names of some precious medicinal herbs, can you help me buy them? The price is negotiable, but what I need are high-quality medicinal herbs." Wang Tao grinned and said, "I may not have the ability if you ask me for something else, Big Brother Tang. But when it comes to buying medicinal herbs, I'm absolutely good at it. We don't have many things in Qingqing Mountain, but we don't lack medicinal herbs. When we come back from the Qingqing Monastery, no matter how many precious medicinal herbs you need, I can buy them for you as long as they are available here. I'll give you a big gift if you can buy them for me," Tan Xiao said with a smile. Wang Tao's expression moved and hurriedly asked, "What kind of gift?" Tan Xiao patted his shoulder and smilingly said, "If I tell you now, there won't be any sense of mystery left. Don't worry, haste makes waste. I'll naturally fulfill my promise and give you a big surprise after I get a lot of precious medicinal herbs." Chapter 822. The moonlight was hazy, and the warm air was blowing to its heart's content. It was the season of spring and flowers were blooming, and the entire Qinglin County was filled with a faint fragrance. Several sparrows flew outside the window, as if they wanted to race the SUV that was moving slowly on the road. "Oh, what do you think of Wang Tao?" Tan Xiao, who was sitting in the back seat, held a cigarette between his fingers and wore a faint smile on his handsome face. His eyes were looking out of the car, but the focus was not obvious. "He's very shrewd and very eloquent," said Mo while driving. "He tried to restrain his personality when we met him, but the pride and arrogance of a second-generation nouveau riche can still be occasionally expressed in his speech and behavior. Unless he can experience a great tribulation, his achievements in this life will be limited." It's a common problem among the second generation of the rich. It's good to have a unique personality, but if they're too ostentatious and domineering, then they'll need a great tribulation to temper themselves. Else they'll attract a lot of trouble because of their arrogance. Anyways, let's not talk about him. Stop and buy some cigarettes if you pass by a tobacco and alcohol store on the way back. All right. Immortal replied. 7 minutes later, the SUV was parked in front of a tobacco and alcohol store. 4 rough-looking youths in gaudy clothes were playing cards in front of the store. After Tanxio walked inside with Immortal, he found that there was no one inside and immediately shouted, "Who's the boss? I want to buy some cigarettes." "Take it from the counter and send the money here later." A yellow-haired youth playing cards around the table at the entrance replied loudly, his eyes never leaving the cards. Tanxio secretly shook his head. How was this a business? It was simply not a proper occupation. After hesitating for a moment, he spoke again. "The quantity I want is a bit much. You'd better come inside." The yellow-haired youth frowned and looked at the store. He reluctantly took the cards in his hand and staggered back to the store asking, "How much is a bit much? What kind of cigarettes do you want to buy?" "Just take the soft chunghwa," said Tanxio. "I want as many as you have in your store." "Soft China?" The yellow-haired youth revealed a smile and sized up Tanxio a few times. Then he clicked his tongue and sighed. "Bro, you're quite extravagant. But I have dozens of soft chunghwa in stock. Do you really want all of them?" "Yes." Tanxio nodded. The yellow-haired youth chuckled and said, "All right, wait a moment." A few minutes later, Tanxio and Immortal left the tobacco and alcohol store with dozens of soft chunghwa in their arms. They threw all of them into the back seat and quickly left. The yellow-haired youth swaggered out of the shop and watched the off-road vehicle leave. Then he returned to the table and said with a smile, "I've met a rich man today. He didn't even talk about the price and directly bought all my soft chunghwa." A young man with a green snake tattoo on his neck curled his lips and snorted, "Bullshit, it's just a few dozen soft chunghwa. This young master can buy hundreds of soft chunghwa with just a casual stroll around the tomb. Cut the crap and let's play cards." A strange glint flashed in the yellow-haired youth's eyes as he grinned and said, "Big brother Wuxia, take us with you when you go to the tomb again. We also want to follow you to broaden our horizons." The tattooed youth rolled his eyes and snorted, "Aren't you afraid that the Zongzi will tear you apart? Aren't you afraid that the Yin souls will take over your bodies and swallow your yang qi?" The yellow-haired youth shrunk his neck and immediately let out a hollow laugh. "Well, we have you, big brother Wuxia." The tattooed youth smiled proudly and said slowly, "Since you want to follow me to broaden your horizons, it's not impossible. However, let's make this clear first. If you encounter any danger at the bottom of the graveyard, it has nothing to do with me. Each of you can only get 10% of the treasures." "All right. No problem. You're so generous, big brother Wuxia." The 3 youths immediately looked happy and happily promised. At the Sunbao 5-star hotel, after the off-road vehicle stopped at the hotel's entrance, Tanxio looked at Immortal and said, "Do you still remember the place where we just bought cigarettes? Go back there and beat that guy with the tattoo on his neck. Remember to break one of his legs and make him spend the next few months in bed." "Understood." Despite the confusion in his heart, he still respectfully replied. "Also, do remember to tell him not to deal with the dead anymore, let alone enter the tombs. Else, it won't just be his lifespan that will be lost, but his family will be implicated as well. They will either get sick or become disabled, or die." Tanxio added once more, "You told me to break one of his legs, boss. Is it to save him?" Immortal was surprised. "Yes, it's to save him," said Tanxio. "Else, if we let him continue to enter the tomb, the death qi on his body will get more and more. He will die in the tomb within 2 months at most." After saying that, Tanxio got off the car alone and entered the Sunbao 5-star hotel. However, he recalled that Zhang Xinya was waiting for him in the hotel and felt a bit helpless inside. Sometimes, Tanxio couldn't bear such heavy feelings. He couldn't give her a future, nor could he have a special affection for her. Instead of making her sad and painful in the future, it was better to sever the relationship with her earlier. Therefore, he secretly made up his mind when he received Zhang Xinya's call. This time, no matter how sad and painful Zhang Xinya was, he must make it clear to her and completely sever this ill-fated relationship. Inside the presidential suite number 1208, Zhang Xinya was leaning on the sofa drowsily, while Zhang Xiaoyu was playing with her mobile phone in high spirits. Long Zhenglin was nowhere to be seen, and only a snoring sound could be heard coming from the next room. Ding dong! The doorbell rang and Jin Shi quickly opened the door. After seeing Tan Xiao standing outside, he quickly said, "Miss Zhang is still waiting for you, boss." Tan Xiao nodded in response. After entering the room, he looked at Zhang Xinya, who immediately became spirited, and Zhang Xiaoyu, who hurriedly put away her mobile phone. He then nodded and said, "It's already so late, yet you haven't gone back to rest yet? We can talk about it tomorrow if we have time." Zhang Xinya strode to greet Tan Xiao. She shook her head and said, "I'm not tired. I just wanted to see you earlier. I talked with Long Zhenglin before and learned that you came to Qinglin County to buy a very important medicinal herb. Is that correct?" "I do want to buy a medicinal herb, but I didn't expect that you would come here." Tan Xiao nodded. "When I came in just now, I saw 2 suspicious people nearby. Are they your bodyguards?" "The company did hire 2 bodyguards for me, and they are always nearby," said Zhang Xinya. "They won't appear unless I'm in danger." Tan Xiao nodded and said, "It's getting late. Since we've already met, go back and rest early. We'll talk about it tomorrow." Zhang Xinya's eyes turned dark. Tan Xiao's order to leave made her feel a bit uncomfortable. Although Tan Xiao didn't conceal his whereabouts from her in the previous phone call, which made her feel that Tan Xiao no longer rejected her. But now Tan Xiao's attitude made her feel even more repulsed. She didn't leave, but stared at Tan Xiao and asked, "Don't tell me you don't want to see me that much?" "It's not that I don't like to see you, but I don't want to see you," said Tan Xiao. "You're a well-known superstar, and the man who appears in front of you is bound to be noticed by others and will cause misunderstandings. Besides, I already have a girlfriend, and we're going to get married in the future, so I don't want her to misunderstand me." In an instant, Zhang Xinya felt a stabbing pain in her heart. She didn't care about being misunderstood by others, but looking at the indifferent expression on Tan Xiao's face, she wanted to tell him that she really liked him and didn't care even if he had a girlfriend. However, she swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She didn't care about it, but Tan Xiao did. She really didn't have the face to speak out her thoughts under such circumstances. Zhang Xiaoyu, who stood at the side, looked at Zhang Xinya, who had a painful expression on her face and tears in her eyes. She immediately strode a few steps forward and loudly said, "Mr. Tang, I know my sister likes you even though this is the first time we meet. Why do you have to hurt her heart? Do you know that she always talks about you and often stares at your photos in a daze? Even the photos on her mobile screen are all of you. Shut up." Although Tan Xiao felt apologetic inside, he still hardened his heart and snapped at the moment. "I'm talking to Zhang Xinya. You're not qualified to interrupt." "I'm not qualified, but I feel sorry for my sister," said Zhang Xiaoyu angrily. "You're too cruel, aren't you? My sister has been waiting for you here for 5 or 6 hours. Yet you just came back and you want to drive her away? You're too heartless." "Humph." Tan Xiao snorted coldly. "You can't judge whether I'm heartless or not. Get out of my room at once, else don't blame me for throwing you out." Zhang Xiaoyu was about to speak but was stopped by Zhang Xinya. As tears flowed out of her eyes, Zhang Xinya quickly raised her hand to wipe them. She stared deeply at Tan Xiao and even raised her hand to gently wipe the dust on Tan Xiao's left shoulder. Then she softly said, "Let's go back and rest if you're tired. You can rest assured that I won't bring you any trouble. You may not want to accept me, but I'll be satisfied as long as I can look at you from afar." After saying that, she then turned around and walked toward the door with a heartache. Tan Xiao looked at her back and sighed inwardly. He didn't want to hurt Zhang Xinya's heart, but he had to do it now. Just like what her younger sister, Zhang Xinyue, said, since he couldn't give her happiness, why should he delay her? Maybe she would meet a better man who would love her more in the future. As the 2 women left, the door of the next room was opened. Although Long Zhenglin still looked a bit sleepy, his eyes were still full of disbelief when he looked at Tan Xiao. Aren't you going too far? I think it's good for you to be a bystander, said Tan Xiao lightly. Chapter 8:23. Tan Xiao didn't want to talk about his feelings with Long Zhenglin. He didn't want him to say anything or express his attitude. He wouldn't hurt Zhang Xinya's heart if he had feelings for her. But a perfunctory attitude without any feelings was the biggest harm to her. Long Zhenglin had known Tan Xiao for a long time, so he naturally knew Tan Xiao's character. He could only force a wry smile upon hearing it, and return to his room to continue sleeping. In room 1206 of the presidential suite, Zhang Xinya went back to her bedroom and cried bitterly. She was indeed deeply hurt by Tan Xiao, and her heart ached as though it was being cut by a knife. Outside the room, regret could be seen on Zhang Xiaoyu's delicate face. She hurriedly told Zhang Xinya about her encounter with Tang Xiao in order to make her happy. But the result was that heartless scoundrel's heartless attitude and Zhang Xinya's pain. What should I do? She didn't want to see Zhang Xinya sad. As her new manager, she hoped that Zhang Xinya could work and live happily. The opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex will be held the day after tomorrow. Sis Xinya will definitely attend the opening ceremony and sing a few songs. But her current mood will definitely affect the event that day. Further, it will have a great negative impact on her if she cries until her eyes are swollen and her voice becomes hoarse. Zhang Xiaoyu anxiously paced back and forth outside the door for a long time. Suddenly, she thought of another person and immediately ran back to her room. Then she hurriedly took out her mobile and dialed a cell number. Hey, why haven't you rested yet, Xiaoyu? Is something the matter to call me this late? Zhang Xinyue's lazy voice came from the phone. I seem to have done something wrong, Sis Xinyue, said Zhang Xiaoyu bitterly. What did you do wrong? Asked Zhang Xinyue with a smile. Did my sis reprimand you? We're now in Qinglin County at the foot of Qingqing Mountain, Sis Xinyue, said Zhang Xiaoyu hurriedly. But I didn't expect that I would bump into that scoundrel, Tan Xiao, in the same hotel I'm staying at. Sis Xinya has been waiting for him for a long time and finally saw him. But, after narrating the whole story, Zhang Xiaoyu continued. Big Sis Xinya is crying very hard now. She's obviously deeply hurt. Warm Moon Sis, what should I do? Zhang Xinyue's voice didn't come out of the phone for a long time until Zhang Xiaoyu couldn't help but call out. Only then did Zhang Xinyue say in a deep voice, When is your commercial performance? The day after tomorrow. Zhang Xiaoyu hurriedly said. I'll rush there tonight since it's the day after tomorrow, said Zhang Xinyue. I should be able to rush there tomorrow. Remember, before I get there, you must accompany her. Wait until I get there. Good. Early morning. When the first ray of sunlight shone into the bedroom, Tan Xiao ended his several hours of cultivation. He put on his clothes, washed up, and went to the hotel restaurant to have breakfast. Then he left the hotel in a hurry. When he talked with Wang Tao yesterday, he heard that there was a medicinal herb market in Qinglin County, so he planned to take a look. Dongcheng. The Qinglin medicinal herbs market did not occupy a large area, but before entering, Tan Xiao could already smell the faint scent of medicinal herbs floating in the air. In order to save time, he immediately released his spiritual sense to search for precious medicinal herbs after entering the market. In just 10 minutes, his spiritual sense had observed all the medicinal herbs in the entire market. To his surprise, he found several precious medicinal herbs that were very old. He lost interest in staying here after spending money to buy them. Boss Tang, you can wait for half an hour if you want to buy more precious medicinal herbs. Today is the weekly opening time of our Qinglin County Medicinal Herbs Market. A batch of medicinal herbs will be delivered here at 9 o'clock. Of course, there will also be some medicinal herb merchants from the surrounding big cities coming to buy medicinal herbs, so the competition will not be small, said Cheng Yan, the 100 Medicine Hall's boss with a smile. Tan Xiao had just bought 2 precious medicinal herbs from him, which made him make a big profit. Moreover, nearly half of the medicinal herbs sent here were bought by his 100 Medicine Hall's pharmacists from the major towns and villages. Will there be precious medicinal herbs being sent here? asked Tan Xiu after hearing it. There should be. Cheng Yin nodded and said, because precious medicinal herbs will appear every week. You must know that we're close to Qingqing Mountain, and many people here know about medicinal herbs. The news spread fast enough, and those herb gatherers also know the value of precious medicinal herbs, so there are a lot of people here. Some courageous people even go to the depths of Qingqing Mountain to look for medicinal herbs. If that's the case, then I'll wait for a while, said Tan Xiu. Half an hour later, as the few cars drove into the Qinglin medicinal ingredient market, two of them stopped at the entrance of the Hall of 100 Medicine. Because the Hall of 100 Medicine was the largest store in the entire medicinal ingredient market, and had the largest business, many medicinal herb gatherers would first send their medicinal herbs here to sell them. In addition to the medicinal herbs collected by the Hall of 100 Medicine's pharmacists. Unless those medicinal herbs that the 100 Medicine Hall didn't like were sold elsewhere. Half of the medicinal herbs would enter the 100 Medicine Hall's pharmacy. River root grass? Before the two cars of medicinal herbs were unloaded, Tan Xiu found a precious medicinal herb through his spiritual sense. Even the appearance of this medicinal herb surprised him. There was a river in the immortal world called the Ruoxue Sky River. The river bank was full of yin qi, and a kind of medicinal herb grew there, which was the river root grass. Later, some powerful immortals discovered that if some corpses were thrown into the Ruoxue Sky River, the river root grass could grow rapidly. Therefore, the river root grass was also known as the corpse grass. Its effect was very special. It could only make people's bones change qualitatively. Whether it was the bones of mortals or immortals, it had the same effect. Therefore, many immortals like to use the river root grass as an auxiliary medicinal herb when refining body refining pills. It didn't take long. As the two cars were unloaded, Tan Xiu selected several good quality medicinal herbs and bought them, including the river root grass. However, the price of the river root grass was very low. He only spent 280 yuan to buy it. With this river root grass, if I get the red flower, the effect of the blood-seizing pill I refined will be better. Maybe I can break through to the qi and blood circulation realm after taking the blood-seizing pill. At noon, Tan Xiu returned to the Sunbao 5-star hotel. Just as he stepped into the hotel's entrance, he saw Zhang Xiaoyu hurriedly running out of the elevator. What a bad guy. Zhang Xiaoyu also saw Tan Xiu. She stopped and angrily glared at Tan Xiu. Then, she ran from the side and quickly disappeared at the hotel's entrance. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing. He didn't dislike Zhang Xiaoyu. He even felt that it was good for Zhang Xingya to have a new personal assistant. At the very least, this new assistant wouldn't be like the one he met for the first time, making Zhang Xingya come to the airport to borrow money from him. Outside the hotel's entrance, Zhang Xiaoyu looked around for a while before she found a red Mercedes-Benz parked in front of her. As the door opened, Zhang Xingyue, who was wearing sunglasses and a mask, threw the car key to Zhang Xiaoyu and asked, "Which floor and which room is my sis staying in?" "Number 1206, presidential suite on the 12th floor," answered Zhang Xiaoyu quickly. Zhang Xingyue nodded and strode toward the hotel's entrance. Zhang Xiaoyu hesitated for a moment before she quickly chased after her and said, "That bad guy just returned to the hotel, sis Xingyue. He's staying in presidential suite 1208. Please scold him for me if you see him." Zhang Xingyue stopped and turned around. "Xiaoyu, I know you're very good to my sis, but don't meddle in her relationship issues. I've met Tan Xiu. He's indeed an excellent man, but I don't want my sis to have any emotional entanglement with him." Zhang Xiaoyu stared blankly and nervously said, "I understand, sis Xingyue." Zhang Xingyue took the elevator to the 12th floor, but she didn't immediately go to presidential suite 1206. Instead, she knocked on the door of presidential suite 1208. As the door opened, she took off her sunglasses and mask and asked, "Is Tan Xiu inside?" Mo Ao, who opened the door, stared blankly and hesitated for a moment before replying, "Yes, he is." Zhang Xingyue stepped into the room and saw Tan Xiu sitting on the sofa and playing with his mobile. She immediately let out a smile and said, "We meet again, Mr. Tang." Tan Xiu raised his head and shook his head with a smile. I've seen a lot of twin sisters, to be honest with you. But it's rare to see one who is so similar to you too. You just arrived in Qinglin County, right? Hehe, you're really good to your sis. Zhang Xinyue walked to the opposite side of Tan Xiao and sat down, saying with a smile, she's my sis, so it's natural for me to treat her well. But Mr. Tang, thank you for provoking my sis with your words. You're welcome. Tan Xiao waved his hand and said, it's what I should do. Zhang Xinyue was silent for a moment and then suddenly asked, Mr. Tang, is your relationship with your girlfriend as good as ever? Of course. Tan Xiao replied calmly. A disappointed look flashed in Zhang Xinyue's eyes. She nodded and said, I see. I'll persuade my sis to let go of her earlier. Also, if it's not necessary, I don't think you should meet my sis again in the next few days. We'll leave Qinglin County immediately after she finishes attending the commercial performance tomorrow. I don't want to meet her again either. Tan Xiao shook his head. But I'm afraid it'll be very difficult. Why? Asked Zhang Xinyue with a frown. As far as I know, your sis was invited to attend the commercial performance, whereas I'm also going to attend the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa Complex tomorrow, said Tan Xiao. Since we appeared at the same time, it would be difficult for us not to meet each other. Unless what? Asked Zhang Xinyue. Unless you replace your sis to attend the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa Complex tomorrow, said Tan Xiao. But I think she'll perform at the opening ceremony tomorrow, so you must be prepared if you replace her. Zhang Xinyue thought for a moment, and then slowly nodded. I'll discuss it with my sis. I can replace her to attend the opening ceremony if she's willing. As for the performance, even if my performance is not as good as my sis, it won't be too far off. I'm confident about it. Chapter 824. Zhang Xinyue only stayed in the presidential suite 1208 for a short time. She hurriedly left and went to suite 1206 after she had said everything she wanted to say. She was already mentally prepared. Yet she still faintly felt distressed when she saw her elder sister's red and swollen eyes and her dispirited mental state. Why are you here, Xinyue? Despite being in a bad mood, Zhang Xinyue was still surprised that her younger sister appeared in Qinglin County. Just as she asked, she suddenly realized that it must be Zhang Xiaoyu who called her sister and told her about the situation here. Otherwise, she wouldn't have rushed here in such a hurry. Zhang Xinyue gently hugged Zhang Xinyue and whispered, Let it go, sis. I can't. Then just leave it to time. Zhang Xinyue faintly sighed. She immediately shifted the topic to avoid her elder sister from being immersed in the pain. Look at your current state, sis. How are you going to attend the opening ceremony of the Villa Complex tomorrow? How about I replace you to attend it tomorrow? No way, said Zhang Xinyue hurriedly. They spent a lot of money to invite me. I may not be in a good state, but I'll make the best use of the time to adjust myself. What they want is only your fame and your appearance. Zhang Xinyue shook her head. But we're almost the same in height and appearance, so it won't be a problem for me to replace you. Besides, do you think that my singing skills are inferior to yours? You do sing very well, said Zhang Xinyue. Those who are not particularly familiar with us won't be able to tell who is who. But, just listen to me, sis. Zhang Xinyue interrupted her. Look at your eyes now. They're red and swollen, and your mental state is terrible. You'll definitely have an accident if you attend the opening ceremony tomorrow. Let's be serious here. If something happens to you in the commercial performance, it will greatly affect your reputation. Those gossip news outlets are eagerly waiting to report your scandal. So instead of letting them make up stories to slander you, it's better for me to help you perform. This, Zhang Xinyue hesitated. All right, then it's decided, said Zhang Xinyue with a smile. That's right, have you had lunch? I drove here overnight, and now I'm starving. I'll tell the hotel's F&B staff to send the food over, said Zhang Xinyue quickly. The next day, when Tan Xiao had just finished his breakfast and arrived at the lobby of Sunbao 5-star Hotel, Zhang Xinyue, who was wearing sunglasses, a mask, and a black trench coat in the corner of the lounge area, stood up with Zhang Xiaoyu and quickly greeted him. You. Tan Xiao would be able to distinguish Zhang Xinyue and Zhang Xinyue if he were to carefully distinguish them. But at this moment, looking at the woman wearing a mask and sunglasses in front of him, he couldn't tell them apart. Mr. Tang, let's go together since you're also going to attend the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex. Zhang Xinyue smiled. Tan Xiao smiled and said, "It seems that you really have a way to persuade your sister. However, it's fine if we go together. I still have to meet a friend, so I need to go with him later." "You have friends here?" Zhang Xinyue was surprised. Tan Xiao smiled and said, "Why? Can't I have friends here?" "That's not what I mean." Zhang Xinyue quickly waved her hand and said, "I'm just curious about why you came to Qinglin County. How about this? Since he's your friend, why don't you take me with you? We'll go straight to the venue of the commercial performance later." Tan Xiao hesitated for a moment before he immediately nodded and said, "If that's the case, then let's go together." Zhang Xinyue didn't ride her sister's nanny car, but sat in Tan Xiao's car instead. Zhang Xiaoyu, who came with Zhang Xinyue, temporarily became her personal assistant, so she also sat in the front seat. "Big guy, drive slowly. Our sis Xinyue is prone to motion sickness." Glancing at Zhang Xiaoyu, Mo Ao started the car without saying anything and quickly rushed to Wang Tao's residence. 10 minutes later, the car was parked outside Wang Tao's residence. As Tan Xiao and Zhang Xinyue entered the courtyard, Wang Tao came out cheerfully. "Ha!" Wang Tao's eyes stared straight at Zhang Xinyue the moment he saw her. It was only when Zhang Xinyue followed Tan Xiao to him that he came back to his senses. He hurriedly stretched out his hand and said, "Hello, Miss Xinya. I'm Wang Tao, and my father is Wang Xuegong. The Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex is a property developed by my family." A look of disgust flashed in Zhang Xinyue's eyes, but she concealed it very well. She didn't shake hands with Wang Tao, but turned to look at Tan Xiao instead. Tan Xiao had heard of Wang Tao's reputation for being lecherous, so he smilingly said, "You don't have to directly ignore me even if you see a beauty, do you? No matter what, we're very close friends." Wang Tao stared blankly for a moment before he immediately let out a hollow smile and retracted his hand. He then looked at Tan Xiao and said, "Please don't take it to heart, big brother Tang. Everyone loves beauty. It's my first time seeing Miss Xinya, so it's normal for me to be attracted to her. Come, let's go inside and have a chat." Tan Xiao said, "Let's just go inside the house and chat. Hurry up and take the medicinal herbs. We need to rush to the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex. If my guess is correct, they should be almost done with their preparations." Wang Tao thought for a moment and said, "Okay, we can talk on the way." Saying, he couldn't help but glance at Zhang Xinyue again before he quickly turned around and ran into the villa. Zhang Xinyue retracted her gaze from Wang Tao's back and whispered, "I don't like him. He's a living lecher. He's not a good person." Tan Xiao said indifferently, "He just said that everyone loves beauty. Who told you to be so beautiful? It's normal for people to look at you a few more times. However, this kid is indeed a bit more lecherous than ordinary people. Since you don't like him, just keep your distance from him." "I'll keep a distance from him." Zhang Xinyue nodded. "However, I need to correct you." "What do you mean?" asked Tan Xiao confused. "Everyone loves beauty." "You're wrong about this," said Zhang Xinyue. "Because there's a different kind of person standing next to me." Cough, cough. Tan Xiao let out a dry cough and no longer talked about this topic. Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex. The winding road was very wide. At the foot of the highest peak in the periphery of Mount Qingcheng, there was a magnificent gate connected to the road. It was more than 30 meters high and more than 20 meters wide. At the gate, more than a dozen security guards in black uniforms were registering the information of passing vehicles. At this moment, two middle-aged men were sitting in a black Buick sedan, watching the driver register the vehicle's information. After the Buick slowly drove through the gate, one of them slowly said, "Wang Xuegong's eldest brother is the Qingqing Monastery's deputy temple master, a man with real power in the sect. Since we're going to uproot the Qingqing Monastery, let's kill Wang Xuegong while we're at it." The other middle-aged man with a ferocious scar on his cheek squinted his eyes and said, "You're right. There were 6 of us brothers in the past. 4 of us died in the hands of the Qingqing Monastery, and only the 2 of us were lucky enough to escape. Since we're here for revenge, let's play it big and make them all die. However, there are too many people here today, so we need to think about what to do. No need. I brought the drunken dragon powder. What? The scar-faced man was aghast. You actually brought the drunken dragon powder you asked Miao Wentong to buy from a foreign poison master, quite real. But do you want to use the drunken dragon powder on these ordinary people? Isn't that like killing a chicken with a butcher's knife? It's too wasteful. I know it's a bit wasteful to use the drunken dragon powder to get rid of Wang Shuagong, but it's not much. Bai Real sneered. As long as I take out 1/10 of the drunken dragon powder and put it in the banquet today, it'll be enough to make Wang Shuagong suffer. Even if he's lucky enough to survive, I'm afraid it'll bring him a lot of trouble later because too many people will die. TSK. When the time comes, we can send some people to pretend to be the family members of the deceased to take revenge on Wang Shuagong. We can stab him to death and then immediately retreat, so it won't attract the attention of outsiders. That's a good idea. The scar-faced man said in a deep voice. In that case, not only will we kill Wang Shuagong, but we'll also destroy his business. It seems this Wang Shuagong is doomed to be ruined. Bai Real nodded and looked to the north. He then coldly snorted and said, It's been 24 years. We brothers fell off the cliff and had a fortuitous encounter, and became cultivators. Moreover, we succeeded in becoming Dao Master Poison's disciple due to our good foundation. 24 years of bitter cultivation was all for the sake of revenge. This time, we must exterminate all the people of the Qingqing Monastery. The scar-faced man sneered. Don't worry. The experts we've trained all these years have all gone up the mountain ahead of us. Once they receive our order, they will immediately kill the people of the Qingqing Monastery. Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa Complex, a 3-story sales center. In a spacious office on the 2nd floor, Wang Shuagong was waiting for the arrival of 2 distinguished guests with anticipation. This time, he had invited a lot of people, including some powerful figures in the government department of Qinglin County, some high-ranking officials in the city, and naturally some friends in the city's business circle. Even the chairman of the city's heavy industry group, Zhao Xianming, had promised to come in person. Boss Xiao is here. A middle-aged woman strode into the room and looked at Wang Shuagong, who was standing by the window. Wang Shuagong turned around and nodded. I'll go out to greet him right away. Clean up VIP room number 3. I'll take Boss Zhao there later. All right. Zhao Xianming was a middle-aged man with a big belly. His complexion was a bit pale due to the wine and women. As the big boss of the largest company in the city, he had an extraordinary bearing and was accompanied by several company leaders. Upon seeing Wang Shuagong coming out to greet him, he smiled and said, I haven't seen you for several months, yet you're still so spirited, Brother Wang. That's right. Today is the opening day of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa Complex. Seeing that a lot of money is about to fly into your pocket, Brother Wang is naturally in high spirits. Let me congratulate you in advance. Chapter 825. Although Wang Shuagong was the richest man in Qinglin County and his business also affected the city, there was still a big gap between him and Zhao Xianming, who had a net worth of billions. Therefore, he naturally looked more respectful on the surface and modestly said, You must be joking, Brother Zhao. It's just a small business of mine, and it's far worse than yours. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy schedule to support us, Brother Zhao. Fragrant tea has been brewed in the VIP room upstairs. Let's go inside and chat. All right. Zhao Xianming replied with a smile. Inside the VIP room, after the 2 men sat down, Zhao Xianming smilingly asked, Brother Wang, the opening ceremony of your Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa Complex is quite big today. Along the way, I saw a few business bosses. That's right, I heard you also invited the superstar, Zhang Xinya, with a huge sum of money? It's my business friends, so I came here to have a small gathering, said Wang Shuagong smilingly. As for Zhang Xinya, I did invite her to Qinglin County to sing at the opening ceremony to liven up the atmosphere. Zhao Xianming squinted his eyes and sighed. You're really amazing, Brother Wang. As a matter of fact, I tried to invite Zhang Xinya to perform at our company's welcoming party last year, but unfortunately, she didn't want to come at all. I can't compare with you in this regard, Brother Wang. Compare my ass. Wang Xuegong cursed inwardly. He had known Zhao Xianming for many years and knew that this guy was very stingy despite being rich and powerful. It was very likely that the appearance fee he gave Zhang Xinya was pitifully low, so it would be strange if she would come. This time, he had spent millions of yuan and used a lot of connections to invite Zhang Xinya over. After exchanging greetings, the door was knocked and Wang Xuegong's middle-aged female secretary came in and reported in a low voice, "Boss, young Master Wang is here." Mr. Tang and the superstar, Zhang Xinya, also came with him. Wang Xuegong's expression moved. His son knew Tan Xiao, so it was normal for them to come together. But how come the superstar, Zhang Xinya, also came with them? Thinking of this, he looked at Zhao Xianming and said with a smile, "Brother Zhao, I'll go receive the guests first. I'll introduce you to a big shot later." Zhao Xianming was stunned. He stopped Wang Xuegong and asked, "Brother Wang, don't keep me in suspense. Who is this so-called big shot?" Wang Xuegong smiled mysteriously and said, very soon, Brother Zhao will know." Finished. He quickly left with the middle-aged female secretary. When he reached the stairs, he saw Tan Xiao, Zhang Xinyue, and his son Wang Tao coming up from below. "Boss Tang, Miss Zhang. From the looks of it, it seems like you already know each other?" Wang Xuegong said with a smile. "We've known each other before, but I didn't expect to meet you in Qinglin County," said Tan Xiao. Wang Xuegong suddenly understood and smilingly said, "Since you already know each other, then I don't have to introduce you to each other. Both of you, please follow me to the VIP lounge to rest. There's still half an hour before the opening ceremony. At that time, I will have to trouble the two of you." "I just came here to join in the fun, Boss Wang," said Tan Xiao. "There's no need to mention this troublesome matter again, right? But Xinya will have to sing a song later, so I'm afraid she'll be tired." "It's nothing I can do to make money for you, boss," said Zhang Xinyue with a faint smile. "Boss?" Wang Xuegong stared blankly and incredulity filled his eyes as he asked in astonishment. "Miss Zhang, you mean? Boss Tang is your company's." "He's just a small shareholder," said Tan Xiao quickly. "My friend invited me, so I couldn't refuse, so I invested some money. Please don't listen to Xinya's joke, Boss Wang." Wang Xuegong shuddered inside. Although Tan Xiao said it lightly, he knew who opened the entertainment company where Zhang Xinya worked, as well as the identity and background of those young masters. He never thought that Tan Xiao turned out to be friends with them. For them to be able to pull him to become a shareholder meant that their relationship must be very good. Maybe Tan Xiao also has an official background. As Wang Xuegong thought up to there, he immediately smiled and sighed. "Boss Tang is really young and promising. Since you're friends with my son, I hope you can guide him in the future." "It's only natural for friends to help each other," said Tan Xiao with a nod. After a few perfunctory words, they came to the VIP lounge. As fragrant tea and snacks were served, Wang Xuegong smilingly said, "Please continue chatting. I'm going to greet the other guests. Tower, take good care of Mr. Tang and Miss Zhang. Try to satisfy them no matter what their needs are." "I know, Dad." Wang Tao quickly glanced at Zhang Xinyue and nodded. Time flew by. The opening ceremony finally arrived. As the host and singer, Zhang Xinyue replaced her older sister, Zhang Xinya, and came to the entrance of the sales center. Cheers and shouts immediately came from the crowded crowd outside. Because of the celebrity effect, there were a lot of people who came this time. There were thousands of people. Zhang Xinyue was not her older sister, Zhang Xinya, but she didn't have the slightest apprehension. She took the microphone and said with a smile, "Welcome everyone." After her speech, Zhang Xinyue handed the microphone to Wang Xuegong next to her. As the owner of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex, Wang Xuegong smilingly said, "Miss Zhang has already said what I wanted to say, so I won't be a repeater. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for your support. I also need to introduce some of the distinguished guests. The one next to me is the deputy mayor of the municipal government. This is the big boss of our city's Golden Rue Group, Boss Zhao. And this is our Qinglin County's county magistrate in charge of economic development. Lastly, I'd like to introduce a very distinguished guest to everyone. As Wang Xuegong spoke up to there, he immediately kept them guessing. But at this moment, thousands of people looked surprised because they could tell from Wang Xuegong's tone that the last guest's identity seemed to be extraordinary. At this moment, even Zhao Xianming and the city's deputy mayor were a bit surprised. Zhao Xianming walked a few steps and came to the edge, where Tan Xiu was standing. He cordially pulled Tan Xiu back to the place where he just stood and said with a bit of excitement, "This is the distinguished guest who came from afar. He's the very famous magnificent Tang Corporation's boss, Mr. Tan Xiu. Furthermore, everyone knows that he has another identity, the young divine Dr. Tang Xiu." "That's right. Tan Xiu?" In a flash, exclamations came from the dense crowd. Even the city's deputy mayor and Zhao Xianming looked shocked. The magnificent Tang Corporation's reputation was getting more and more resounding, to the point that everyone in the country knew about it. Yet, the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss unexpectedly came here. This was a great figure. Furthermore, almost everyone present had heard of this young divine doctor. He was the man who was scrambled to be reported by the major media before the new year. The divine Dr. Tan Xiu who won the respect of countless people. Heavens! I never thought that the Star City Chinese Medical Hospital's young divine Dr. Tan Xiu would turn out to be the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss. He's truly worthy of being the richest man in Qinglin County. He can even invite such a great figure like divine Dr. Tang. He's really amazing. This is big news. Being able to see such a great figure makes my life worth living. Fortunately, I came here today. Otherwise, how could I see such a great figure? This is so inspiring. I never thought that the magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss would be so young. Moreover, he's also a famous young divine doctor in the Chinese medical field. He's simply my idol. Amazing. Looking at the excited faces below, Tang Xiu could only force a wry smile inwardly. For the sake of the red silk flower, he had to show his face in public again, and even combine his two identities. It was likely that he wouldn't be able to keep a low profile in the future even if he wanted to. Wang Xuegong smilingly said. Then Boss Tang will say a few words. Tan Xiu quickly said, "Boss Wang, this is a bit against the rules, isn't it? The leaders of the city, the county, and the bosses of the business world are all here. Letting me speak this?" Zhao Xianming was rich and powerful in his hometown, and he was a very proud man. There were not many people who could catch his eyes these days. But when he looked at Tan Xiu, he admired him from the bottom of his heart. It was not only because Tan Xiu was the magnificent Tang Corporation's boss, but also because of his achievements in Chinese medicine. Therefore, Zhao Xianming stepped forward and smilingly said, "You've come from afar, Boss Tang. You're our most distinguished guest. If you're not qualified to say a few words, I'm afraid we won't dare to speak." Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, "You must be Boss Zhao. Since you've said so, then I'll be bold and say a few words. I'm very happy to be able to attend the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex, and see so many friends here. At the same time, I also wish the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex a complete success. Thank you everyone." Wang Xuegong took the microphone handed by Tan Xiu and excitedly said, "Thanks to Boss Tang's auspicious words, I now announce the opening ceremony of the Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's Villa complex. All friends and guests who are interested in buying villas, please go to the sales center to choose. At 12 noon, all the guests who ordered the villa in the morning will have the opportunity to attend a luncheon and listen to Miss Zhang Xinya, a well-known superstar." Shortly after, Wang Xuegong and the others retreated to the sales center and returned to the VIP lounge upstairs. Many people came to visit Tan Xiu due to his identity being exposed. After exchanging greetings, he and Wang Tao quietly went to the rooftop to have some leisure time. "Your dad is very good at doing business." Tan Xiu sat cross-legged on the rooftop, lit a cigarette and said, "No matter how good my dad is at doing business, he can't be compared to you, Big Brother Tang." Wang Tao said with a smile, The name of the magnificent Tang Corporation is like a thunderclap reverberating in my ears. You've seen how fast my dad's expression changed after he learned your identity yesterday. Tan Xiao chuckled. Afterward, the two chatted for a long time until 12 noon. Only then did they come down from the rooftop and went to the luncheon hall. Chapter 826. The luncheon hall was set up in the property management area. When Tan Xiao's group arrived, nearly 100 guests had already taken their seats. As the staff led them to the innermost table in the middle, Wang Xuegong, who had been waiting for a long time, immediately got up and smilingly said, "Boss Tang, Miss Zhang, please take a seat." Zhang Xingyue gently sat down, but Tan Xiao didn't immediately take a seat. The moment he entered the luncheon hall, he faintly smelled a faintly discernible fragrance. The fragrance was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't recall where he had smelled it before. He looked around and found that nearly 100 guests were chatting merrily and wittily. Many of them were looking in his direction, causing him to furrow his brows involuntarily. He couldn't find the source of the fragrance, but he was somewhat vigilant inwardly. It was as though his sixth sense was playing tricks on him, giving him a vague feeling that danger was approaching. "What's wrong, Boss Tang?" Wang Xuegong looked around in surprise, and then looked at Tan Xiao with a suspicious expression. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment before he slowly sat down and shook his head. "It's nothing. I just smelled something familiar." Wang Xuegong couldn't help but burst into laughter. After taking a seat, he said, "Since Boss Tang thinks that my place smells familiar, it means that you find this place familiar. If you don't mind, Boss Tang, you can choose one of the several villas in my Golden Goblet Emperor Gao's villa complex as your residence. Consider it a gift to thank you for coming here." "Thank you for your kindness, Boss Wang." Tan Xiao shook his head. "But I won't be staying here for long. I don't have much time to live in a villa, so I'll pass." Wang Xuegong nodded with a smile, and no longer talked about this topic. Shortly after, Zhang Xingyue, who sat next to Tan Xiao, was invited to the temporary stage and sang 3 songs for everyone. Her voice was very beautiful. Although her singing skills were slightly inferior to her older sisters, there were no great musicians present, so they naturally couldn't distinguish it. The performance ended. As the other supporting singers came on the stage, Zhang Xingyue returned to Tan Xiao's side and sat down. A strange light flashed in her bright eyes as she took advantage of the fact that no one at the table paid attention to her and whispered, "What's wrong with you, Tan Xiao? Why do I feel that you're a bit absent-minded after coming here? Do you smell a special fragrance?" asked Tan Xiao with a frown. "Fragrance? You and Boss Wang also said that you smelled a familiar fragrance, but I didn't smell any fragrance at all," said Zhang Xingyue. "Now that the cold dish has just been sent over, perhaps your sense of smell is so sharp that you smelled it from the cold dish?" "Absolutely not." Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "When we just entered the luncheon hall, there was that fragrance. There was a strong smell of medicinal herbs in this fragrance. In the past, even if one smelled a well-brewed medicinal soup, one would be able to distinguish the medicinal herbs used in the soup. But today, I don't know what's going on, but I can't tell what medicinal herb it is. I just feel that it's very familiar. It's that strange." Zhang Xingyue was surprised. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment, and the vigilance in his heart grew stronger. After a moment of silence, he responded to the toast of his table mates. Just as he was about to find an excuse to wander around, his expression suddenly changed, and his eyes instantly looked towards the door of the side hall. There, more than a dozen staff members were carrying stew over. As they approached, the smell became stronger and stronger. They didn't even need to breathe for the smell to enter their nostrils. "You smell it, don't you?" Tan Xiao turned to look at Zhang Xingyue and said in a low voice. Zhang Xingyue looked at Tan Xiao with a confused expression and said, "Smell what? Is it that familiar smell you mentioned? I don't see it. How come I don't smell it?" Tan Xiao's expression changed. He suddenly got up and quickly stood in front of the staff member who was delivering the dishes. Under the astonished eyes of nearly 100 guests in the hall, Tan Xiao then said in a deep voice, "Can I taste this stew first?" "Ha! The staff member knew Tan Xiu's identity, but he never expected that the famous divine Dr. Tan Xiu would make such a strange request. Wang Xuegong was clueless about what happened, but he strode to Tan Xiu's side and asked, "What's wrong with you, Boss Tang?" "I want to taste this stew first," said Tan Xiu. Wang Xuegong was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. "Boss Tang, you don't have to be in such a hurry even if you're hungry, right? I'll have someone send a few more pots later if you like this stew." Tan Xiu shook his head and casually lifted the lid of the clay pot. When white smoke came out of the pot, Tan Xiu was startled and instantly smelled the scent of several medicinal herbs. Dark zen seed, carrion grass, scorpion fruit. All of a sudden Tan Xiu's expression drastically changed and he shouted in horror, "There's poison in this stew." "What?" Everyone in the entire luncheon hall was shocked and stood up from their seats. Upon hearing Tan Xiu's words, Wang Xuegong looked incredulous and hurriedly said, "I think you're mistaken, Boss Tang. How can there be poison in this stew? I invited all the chefs from the county with a lot of money, so there's no need for them to poison people." Zhang Xingyue quickly ran to Tan Xiu's side and said, "Don't talk nonsense, Tan Xiu. Can you really determine that there's poison in this stew?" "Yeah. You can't joke about this, big brother Tang." Wang Tao also quickly ran over and said. A murderous glint flashed in Tan Xiu's eyes as he coldly said, "When I stepped into the luncheon hall, I faintly smelled a familiar smell. I wasn't sure where this smell came from, but now I finally figured it out. It's from the stew in front of me. Dark zen seed is a very poisonous thing that grows in cold and hot places. Just one dark zen seed can poison a whale to death. Carrion grass is a plant that grows on decaying corpses and grows from the heart of a decaying corpse. To make this carrion grass thrive, it needs to be watered with fresh blood every 7 days, and it needs to be watered 49 times. Scorpion fruit is a highly poisonous fruit. It's grayish-black in color and somewhat similar in appearance to a scorpion. The place where this fruit grows is extremely harsh, and can only be found in extremely cold places." Speaking up to here, Tan Xiu clenched his fists and was silent for more than 10 seconds before he continued. "These 3 kinds of highly poisonous herbs are enough to poison thousands of people to death. But in addition to these 3 kinds of highly poisonous herbs, there should also be dozens of highly poisonous herbs mixed in this stew. However, the most terrifying thing is not these, but the flood dragon's heart blood." Wang Tao incredulously said, "Big brother Tang, isn't what you said too amazing? Let alone those highly poisonous things that I've never heard of. Just this flood dragon's heart blood alone is impossible to exist. How could there be a flood dragon in this world?" Tan Xiu indifferently glanced at him and said, "You haven't seen or heard of it, but that doesn't mean that flood dragons don't exist. I've seen the introduction of this poison in an ancient medical book and know its name, drunken dragon powder. I can tell you that even if a drop of drunken dragon powder is mixed into a bowl of water and then poured into these stew pots, it's enough to poison all of us here." Gasp! Everyone in the entire luncheon hall instantly looked extremely unsightly. Many of them looked at the stew pots carried by the staff with lingering fear, as though they had seen a terrifying snake or scorpion. "Go find an animal, be it a cat, a dog, a chicken, a duck, or a sheep. Hurry up," Tan Xiu ordered in a deep voice. "Understood." When a staff member heard this, he immediately ran out in a hurry. Not long after, he came back with a live chicken and a live sheep. "Pour a spoonful of the stew soup into their mouths," ordered Tan Xiu. "Understood." Several staff members quickly came over and poured a spoonful of the soup into the chicken and the sheep's mouths. Then, they loosened them according to Tan Xiu's order. 2 minutes later, Wang Tao looked confused as he looked at the chicken and the sheep and asked in surprise, "Are they all right? Are you going to use them to test the poison, Boss Tang?" asked Wang Xuegong hurriedly. "No problem." Tan Xiu didn't speak and just stared at the chicken and the sheep on the ground. Half a minute later, the chicken that was trying to escape suddenly fell to the ground. "What? There's blood flowing out of its mouth. And its eyes, why are they so red?" Someone beside him shouted in horror. Someone nearby exclaimed in horror. Everyone's body turned cold as though they were looking at the chicken that twitched a few times, and then died with fear on their faces. After seeing the chicken's condition, Tan Xiu's eyes then fell on the sheep. A minute later, the sheep also slowly fell to the ground and then twitched and died. They're all dead. If the chicken had been poisoned to death, everyone's hearts were filled with fear. However, when the sheep was poisoned to death, everyone couldn't help but shiver. They subconsciously wanted to escape from this place. Wang Xuegong's heart was like falling into an ice cave. With a confused look on his face, he murmured, "Who poisoned the stew? Who would be so ruthless as to poison all of us here to death?" "Boss Wang, have you offended anyone recently?" Tan Xiu frowned. Wang Xuegong opened his mouth, but he didn't know how to answer. His business was so big, and even if he didn't offend anyone recently, he must have offended a lot of people in the past. How could a businessman, especially one with such a big business, not offend anyone? Tan Xiu was silent for a moment and then slowly said, "Call the police. This matter is too serious. If we can't find the real culprit, I'm afraid we won't have the appetite to eat anymore." A grateful look appeared on Wang Xuegong's face as he looked at Tan Xiu and said, "I'll call the police right away, Boss Tang. It's all thanks to you being here today. Otherwise, all of us." He didn't finish his words. But everyone in the luncheon hall was as clear as a mirror. If it weren't for Tang Xiu, they would have all been poisoned to death here today. It was him. He was everyone's savior. Chapter 827. Facing nearly 100 people, Tan Xiu didn't feel the slightest joy in his heart. On the contrary, his heart was filled with worry and bitterness at this time. Others were now considering who the real culprit was, but he was considering whether the drunken dragon powder was concocted by a cultivator. If it was, then the culprit must be an evil cultivator who was proficient in poisons. Take care, Boss Wang. Tan Xiu didn't like to meddle in other people's business. Although he was annoyed by the ruthlessness of the culprit, he didn't want to have a conflict with the culprit before confirming the identity of the culprit. It would be fine if the culprit was not an evil cultivator. But if it was an evil cultivator and he failed to get rid of him in time, it would definitely cause endless troubles in the future. He wasn't afraid of it, but he still had friends and family. It would be impossible to guard against the culprit if the culprit was someone he cared about. Zhang Xinyue's complexion was faintly pale. She was glad that Tan Xiu came to Qinglin County. If Tan Xiu hadn't come, her elder sister, Zhang Xinya, wouldn't have been so heartbroken. She wouldn't have traveled thousands of miles from Shanghai to attend today's luncheon in place of her elder sister. It could be said that Tan Xiu's appearance today not only saved her life, but also saved her elder sister's life. At this moment, upon seeing that Tan Xiu was about to leave, she hurriedly said, "Boss Wang, my work is done. Now, it's time for your company to sell the property. So I'll take my leave first." Having said that, she didn't give Wang Xuegong any time to speak and hurriedly chased after Tan Xiu. Wang Xuegong was very frightened at the moment, but he was also very angry. He didn't know who was so vicious as to poison him, the guests he invited, and even the guests who bought the villa to death. He didn't care about Zhang Xinyue's departure, but Tan Xiu's departure made him more worried. "Please wait, Boss Tang." Wang Xuegong hurriedly chased after him and stopped Tan Xiu at the hall's entrance. "Our friendship hasn't reached the point where I can risk my life for you, Boss Wang." Tan Xiu shook his head. "It's obvious that someone wants to put you to death, and even wants you to never be able to rise again. It's not appropriate for me to get involved in such a grudge. Listen to my advice. The business can continue, but you should find a safe place to hide." "Boss Tang, I know I shouldn't have dragged you into this, but I can't avoid it," Wang Xuegong bitterly said. "If the other party really wants to kill me, they'll definitely do everything they can to kill me." Tan Xiu said, "If you're really afraid, then dispose of your business as fast as possible and run away with the cash. There's one thing I didn't want to tell you at first, but since your son is willing to take me to the Qingqing sect, I'll kindly tell you this. Drunken dragon powder isn't something that ordinary people can refine. There must be a cultivator behind it. In addition, the cost of refining the drunken dragon powder was extremely high. It was difficult to measure even with money. Therefore, if the other party did not have a deep grudge against you, It was absolutely impossible for them to commit such a heinous poisoning act in today's society. All right, I've said what I need to say. You're on your own now. A cultivator? Deep fear burst out from Wang Xuegong's eyes. He wouldn't be so afraid if it was an ordinary enemy who wanted to seek revenge against him. At worst, he could give up his business for the time being and hide with his big brother of the Qingqing sect. But if it was a cultivator, the Qingqing sect's people wouldn't be able to protect him even if he fled to the Qingqing sect. He might even implicate the entire Qingqing sect. Let's go to a faraway place. A firm look appeared on Wang Xuegong's face. He didn't like to be sloppy in dealing with people. Since the other party might be a cultivator, then he must go to a faraway place to save his life. Otherwise, he would lose everything if he lost his life, no matter how much money he had. Boss Tang, can I ask you a favor? You can rest assured that I'm not asking you to get involved in this matter. I just want you to take my son to the Qingqing sect and hand him over to my big brother. You don't need to say it, I'll take him there, said Tan Xiao. Wang Tao, who followed him out, immediately shook his head and loudly said, I'm not leaving, Dad. Someone wants to harm us, so I must advance and retreat with you. Idiot! Wang Xuegong angrily shouted. If the other party is really a cultivator, you'll only be throwing your life away in vain even if you stay. Without you in Qinglin County, I'll have nothing to worry about. I'll deal with my family's business as fast as possible and gather as much money as possible before I flee this place. I'll naturally find a way to contact you and pick you up after I've settled down. Wang Tao still wanted to speak, but Tan Xiao stopped him. Your dad's right. You'll only be a burden to him and won't get any benefits if you stay, said Tan Xiao. Let's go. Let's go to the Qingqing sect first and not affect your dad's work. A few minutes later, Tan Xiao and the others came to the parking lot. He immediately raised his brows when he saw Mo Ao, Jin Shi, and the others waiting for him. He had just fed the soup to the chickens and sheep, and was waiting for the result. He had secretly ordered Mo Ao and the others to go to the kitchen to find the suspect who poisoned them. Now that they had all come back, it meant that the result was out. We caught two, boss. Mo Ao quickly glanced at Wang Tao and Zhang Xinyue, and then reported in a low voice. Where are they? Asked Tan Xiao. Mo Ao pointed to the window and said, They're inside. They're both martial arts practitioners and can be regarded as experts in today's society. Tan Xiao nodded in response. He then came to the car's door in a few steps. After opening the door, he saw two middle-aged men tied up in the back seat. They were bleeding from their 7 apertures and were paralyzed in the car, losing their breath. They're dead. Mo Ao muttered to himself in disbelief. Tan Xiao quickly checked the two men's bodies and finally concluded that they committed suicide by taking poison. However, they were tied up tightly, indicating that they had embedded the poison sacs in their dentures in advance. Once they were captured, they would bite the poison sacs and commit suicide. This was a big problem. Tan Xiao looked at the two corpses with a headache. He never thought that he would encounter such an unlucky thing after attending the opening ceremony of the villa complex that he was unwilling to attend. Behind him, Wang Tao and Zhang Xinyue looked at the two corpses in the car with fear written all over their faces. One of them was a second-generation rich kid, while the other was a small business owner. They had never seen such a murder case in reality. How could they ever see corpses bleeding from their 7 apertures? If it weren't for Tan Xiao, Mo Ao, and the others, they would have run away in fear. Tan Xiao, what should we do now? Zhang Xinyue subconsciously grabbed Tan Xiao's arm and asked with a trembling voice. Tan Xiao gently patted the back of her hand and said, Don't worry about it. It's just 2 nameless people who died. I'm afraid there's a mastermind behind this incident who hasn't shown himself yet. Anyways, I'll send Ao to send you back to the hotel first. You'll immediately leave Qinglin County after you meet up with your sister. Zhang Xinyue calmed herself down and suddenly realized something. She quickly took out her mobile phone and dialed Zhang Xinyue's number. After talking with the other party for a while, and learning that her sister was safe and sound, she hurriedly hung up the phone. I can't go back to meet up with my sister now, Tan Xiao. Why? Asked Tan Xiao confused. Today's incident is too strange. We still haven't figured out who the real target of the mastermind is until now, said Zhang Xingyue. It's better to be safe than sorry. What if the person they want to kill is not Wang Xuegong but me? So I think it's better to follow you first. Your sister? Tan Xiu frowned. Others don't know about our sister's situation. They won't keep their eyes on the hotel as long as I don't go back, said Zhang Xingyue. I'll inform my sister to leave Qinglin County now and go back to Shanghai to wait for me. I want to go back to Xinhua. Zhang Xiaoyu hurriedly said. Tan Xiu thought for a moment and nodded. You're right. Let's do it this way. I'll send Gu Tao and Zhang Ju to escort this little girl to meet up with your sister, and then send them all the way to Shanghai. Since you're going to stay with me, it's good to use you as a distraction. However, we're going to enter the depths of Qingqing Mountain. Do you think your little body can withstand it? Zhang Xingyue was very satisfied with Tan Xiu's arrangement and seriously said, I can do it as long as you can. All right, it's decided then, said Tan Xiu. Gu Tao, Zhang Ju, you two take her and leave immediately. Don't stay in Qinglin County for a long time. Shuesha, He Xiong, you two find a way to dispose of these two bodies and don't leave any traces. Understood. The four cupped their fists and answered. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu's group of 5 stopped at the top of the outermost mountain peak of Qingqing Mountain. As Tan Xiu lit a cigarette and just took 2 puffs, 2 figures dashed over lightning fast and quickly arrived in front of Tan Xiu. We've disposed of those 2 bodies, boss. There's absolutely no trace left, reported Shuesha while cupping his fists. Tan Xiu nodded and looked at Zhang Xingyue and Wang Tao, who were panting at this time. Then he said, let's rest here for the time being and continue our journey 20 minutes later. Tell me, Wang Tao, how long will it take for us to reach Qingqing Monastery? Wang Tao panted and looked at the northern mountain range and said, we'll reach Qingqing Monastery tomorrow evening at least if we follow this method. I know the way, but we may encounter danger on the way since there are many wild beasts in the deep mountains and forests. Don't worry, ordinary wild beasts are no threat to us, said Tan Xiu indifferently. Recalling Tan Xiu's identity, Wang Tao nodded and said, I'm not too worried since Big Brother Tang is with us. It's just that we didn't prepare water and food before we set off. I'm afraid we'll be in trouble if we get thirsty and hungry on the way. Hee. Tan Xiu shook his head with a smile and didn't speak anything. It's the same for us whether we bring water and food or not, said Mo Ao in a rough voice. In my eyes, this deep mountain forest is full of things to fill our stomachs. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.